So I'm all disheveled today. I woke up and I was like, I'm not gonna shower or anything. I can do that later. Not so much in the morning. Boldoro, you're right, obviously. Morning for me, afternoon for you all. That's why I think we get that. So we might even open up the Discord just to, that's okay. A good old troll is never unwelcome here. To kind of have these conversations. Again, apologize for the cough, the sickness, etc. So we're going to take a little bit of time. We're going to talk a little bit about the coronavirus. Let me explain to you, sort of my situation. So first and foremost, I have been following this pretty closely for a while now. I would say following it since the early outbreak in China. Particularly because I was pretty convinced from the onset that this is going to be something difficult to contain in a single country, especially a country with a population like China. And some might even say that I am too interested in this topic. I probably spend a couple hours a day reading about what is happening, not only in the United States, but also in other countries. For full disclosure, I will come out and I will say that I do not agree with the whole this is just a flu, we shouldn't be concerned. And again, I will explain why. But I also want to hear the opinions of people, right? Because other than a few tweets, other than my own family, I haven't talked to a lot of people about this. And I kind of figured there would be a point at which we would do that on stream. Take care, Tofu Beans. And this has affected me in some really interesting ways. Like, for example, Amazon. Well, Andrew, we'll get to that in just a second, right? Let me, I want to give a lot of context for why I even want to talk about this. So obviously, many of you have heard that we canceled TwitchCon Amsterdam. Very difficult decision. And I know, Andrew, that was one of the things that, you kind of said, hey, I feel like maybe that's too much too soon. We have been instructed to work from home. Not that hard for me since I already work from home. So that's not a big deal. But it is a big deal, right? Because when a company like Amazon says, hey, everyone should work from home. So already, even in the early hours of the coronavirus sort of having a larger spread occur over the U.S., a lot of precautions being taken. Obviously, I'm also very interested in what this is doing to the markets, the global economy, the panic, right? There's many aspects of the coronavirus. So we're going to talk, and again, I'm going to keep stressing this over and over, is that we're going to have a respectful conversation. All right? I know you're like, we're on Twitch, man. And I think it's okay for people to have their differing opinions. We are going to disagree. In fact, I would not be surprised or shocked if a lot of people after the stream were like, holy shit, Wheat, you're actually cray-cray over the top. So another part, just for full context, is that, my wife has very, very bad asthma. So, a lot of times what you hear is this. Oh, it's not that bad. It's just like the flu. It's mostly just bad for the elderly and people with underlying respiratory problems. Cool. Put me in that fucking category. Not me, but my wife, someone who I happen to care about pretty fucking deeply, is dependent on her inhaler. Has had situations where, like there have been scary times, right? So for me, the coronavirus might as well be cancer, right? Like it has a high chance of having a pretty detrimental effect on my wife, which means that like Minnie can't get it, I can't get it, right? So that heightens my concern. And I do think that a lot of people have said, Wheat, you're crazy, without understanding that context. So, as I've said before, I would rather be ridiculously cautious and laugh it off later than regret it forever. And I think that is a completely fucking fair perspective to be going from. Now, that being said, I'm not necessarily interested in, say, creating a panic. But I do look at what is going on and feel like we should look at everything that is happening here. I appreciate that. Julius, and Andrew, I feel like once I give that context, people are like, oh, yeah, I totally get that. But I mean, one of the things that's surprising to me is, everyone, as far as I know, has a parent, a grandparent, someone they know who this might affect more than others. And so sometimes I am surprised at sort of a lack of empathy, because even though the death rate right now is still pretty low, I think it's been clear, those who have been affected are sort of in or experience underlying issues that, could lead to death. So, and Weasel, yeah, I'm actually been surprised because I have not, raise your hand if you have seen anyone on Twitch aside from this stream right here talk about coronavirus. And I don't mean in a jokingly way. I mean actually saying, hey, we're going to have this discussion today. Because I haven't. And I've looked. Granted, I could have missed, right? And so, especially given the fact that we have canceled TwitchCon, right? Many people still might be saying why. So that's what I want to talk about a little bit. So, one of the things I will probably do is, I'm really curious. First off, is anyone happen to be from Italy? Because, right, a lot of my news comes from sources that is being reported by individuals in the United States. So I have a really big context. Okay, Glam, that's good. I really like to hear from someone who is in Italy what the sentiment is, the feeling. Zoo 993, I'm in a red zone, Eastern Piedmont. All right, so we do have someone. So that's great, because I want to know that. I want to understand that context. So thank you for being open on that. Yeah, Zeke, as far as I know, said he was still going to go. And, to be honest, like, who knows what's going to happen in the next month? I would not do that. I mean, for example, I was going to go to a pinball tournament not this Friday, but a week from Friday. I really wanted to go see Dead Flip. I really wanted to go play pinball. But unfortunately, in the current climate, playing pinball, which happens to be an activity where people touch things and then you touch them, might not be the wisest idea. So the other piece of the context I want to give before we kind of jump into this is that the first case in Nebraska, which at first didn't seem like that big of a deal, right? So we got an email last night from the school district.
Welcome to Epileptic
and
Gaming.
Weasel. Welcome back to the fields. We got an email from the school last night that said, hey, you may have heard that we had the first case in Nebraska, and we wanted to let you know that 6 schools in this district had participants at an event that this first case attended. Now, we won't know until later today how many kids they actually pulled out, but it was one of those scenarios where, I feel like I've been watching things from a further back, a 50,000 foot view, and this hit really close to home, right? Because this event took place on February 27th, which means that a student who may or may not have been, or students, we don't even know at this point, may or may not have been exposed or infected. We don't know that for sure. But if they were, hypothetically, there was at least 5 or 6 days for this person or persons to expose and or transmit within any of these schools that were listed. I'm very happy that the school has been communicating with us. I'm very happy that they sound like they're taking the precautions. But I think it also just goes to show how close this became much quicker than I had expected. So, mini spring break isn't until next week. So, it definitely is a red alert. Just like kind of Jeremy says here, because that's kind of was our red alert, right? We can do a good job of containing and quarantining ourselves. Oh, wow. Both your kids are supposed to be going to Greece in June. Yeah, my mom is supposed to take a trip to Europe in like a couple months. It's something that she's been planning for a while. And it kind of scares the shit out of me. I'm not going to lie. Right? My mom's older. And so she would be in the group that is, it has been shown is more susceptible to this. I feel like there's a million ways that I could go from this point. And I do want to potentially open up this discussion for us to have on Discord. So if you would like to join the stream, I will be keeping an eye out on Discord. I am going to be, in fact, on air. I am going to even change so that I'm not going to type much, so that shouldn't be a problem, but so that we can have a discussion. This isn't just like a one-way street conversation. This is a multiple-way street conversation. So, you know, one of the things that I think is really important to potentially talk about as well. All right, so let's start with some comments from chat. So, I feel like I've been seeing this comment, and look, I'm not like putting anyone's chat up to like call them out. I think like these are the things that need to drive the discussion. So, it's Leo XZ says, I think that everyone is exaggerating with the coronavirus because this disease is basically a change of SARS. Nothing new in the world. Just need to take precautions since there is no treatment that kills the virus 100%. Yes. So like, this is a really interesting comment to me because, is there some exaggeration? Is there maybe some panic? Yeah, there might be some panic. Do I think that it is... Oh, no. My wife just messaged me, did you see the markets? I'm scared to even look. I'm guessing they're going to be super fucking bad. Holy shit. Oh my God. 1,900 points. Well,
As you know, that was a done deal long ago.
crazy. I mean, is that exaggeration? See that red right there? And I don't even know if there's a day where the markets have dropped 1,900 points. Not to say that's what's going to happen, right? Because people might say, cool, I'm buying. And yes, oil prices are also having an effect on this. So, is there some exaggeration? There might be some overreacting. However, the question becomes is that bad? Right? Is this a better to be safe than sorry? I don't know. So, if you would like to join up, there's a few things I want to talk about today. I'd love to talk about people's experiences in their countries and or towns. I would love to talk about how things are being handled here in the United States. And I personally have a really big problem with how it's being handled here in the United States. I think that one of the best things I've heard is that China literally gave us 2 months of lead time, and we pissed that time away. We kind of said, hey, Right? We could have been using that time to ramp up testing or get ready, and we didn't. I mean, already so good. So, if you would like to join me, I want to kind of do it on a one-on-one. I'm on air, so I'm gonna drop down to phones, and if you'd like to join me, I'm gonna do it one at a time. Let me know in Discord. Just say, hey, hi, little kitty. Hey, I'd love to get on and chat with you. And then we're gonna okay, Shanna, I will get you after the stream. I'll get you after the stream. I'm literally this is open phones, right? For those of you that know, I love to bring folks on and have these discussions. If you'd like to know how to join, just join my Discord, and then what I will do is just say, hey, I'd love to chat in general chat. I'm going to be down in the phones, in the the phones thing. I will warn you, my mic is going to sound like shit once you come into this Discord because I'm using my other mic, but that you'll sound amazing. So before I bring on folks, let's just, I want to talk a little bit about some of the websites that I've been using. This is probably the one that I have been using the most. And let me bring this up real quick. It's a Worldometer site, and actually I'm going to refresh this because we are definitely higher than. There we go. So basically the site just shows how many cases, how many deaths, how many recovered, and then it has a scale that shows what is essentially exponential growth. And then it has breakdowns by each country that shows the new cases of the day, deaths of the day, etc. So, I remember watching this number since it was 1. And before Trump said, hey, don't worry about this. This is all good. The URL for this site is worldometers.info/coronavirus, I believe. Yes, that's correct. All right, thank you, Zoo. I appreciate it, and thanks for giving us your sort of story and whatnot. I wish you the best. I know that it's a little rough over there in Italy right now. You can talk about Winamp, the best MP3 player in the world. So anyway, we might reference this site. There's another site that I've been using that I don't know that I've been looking at it on my phone, but let me actually pull it up here. It is, let's see. It is coronavirus.1.3acres.com. And this one, English. This one is focuses on the United States and Canada, where they actually have like a state-by-state breakdown. And interestingly enough, like for example, I can click on Nebraska, and then it actually has a little bit of narrative on each of the, cases with an actual source to each case, which I think is important, right? So that people aren't just like, oh my God, there's 5 billion cases in Florida. No, you can click on Florida, and then you can literally see it even numbers the case in the U.S. So, here's cases, an adult, right? It goes into, hey, this person tested positive after a trip to Italy, that sort of thing. Really, really fantastic site. I'm really impressed with this one. So, I think a lot of money is going to be lost in canceled events, like, to be totally honest with you. There's also a site, isitcanceledyet.com. And it basically, has the event. Is it canceled? It either says no, or yes, and then it has a link to the article that says, yes, it is canceled. Coachella is probably the one that is the scariest. But yeah, a lot of events have been canceled. There's TwitchCon Amsterdam, unfortunately. Anyway, so let's bring it back. I would imagine South by Southwest, 35 years of legacy, had to cancel. And that's one of the topics I want to talk about, right? There's two very polarizing positions. Either A, I can't fucking believe that all these events are canceling, it's not that big of a deal, or B, yes, that was the right thing to do. So, quick raise of hands. Let's do a quick poll real quick. Here, I'm going to straw because I would like to keep some of these going for a while. We're going to create a poll. Do you agree with all of the event cancellations? Very, very simple. Yes, no, and we'll even add a still uncertain, right? Because maybe you're like, it seems like it might be a good idea, but we're not going to allow multiple choices. Allow multiple votes just in case. And we're going to create this poll. I'm going to drop this into chat. I will be the first vote. I agree with all the event cancellations. So let me drop that in there. Do you agree with all of the event cancellations? Very simple. Would love to see what people say. Obviously, your vote's anonymous. You don't need to put it in chat. But, for full context, I'd like to know. Piani, what are you doing? Come here. All right. Depends on where the event is being held. Maybe we should have added a new option. If you're that way, maybe still uncertain is the vote that you want to make then. All right. I mentioned that I would like to open up and hear people's the cruise lines. Oh man, don't even get me started. I mean, planes are the reason why this spread in the first place, right? There's no doubt that the airlines are going to suffer catastrophic effect from this. However, I do have to give some props to both United and Delta, and I know there's others so far, but I've gotten emails from them that says, we will let you take your ticket, cancel, and use it as credit for, other flight or travel later on, which I think is really responsible and great thing to do. Okay. If you'd like to join us, we're going to take callers one at a time. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to talk about some of the different things. I'd love to hear opinions from people who are in other countries. I'd like to talk to some folks here in the U.S. in terms of how you think the United States has been handling it. If you think, and I mean, full disclosure, I think our president's an idiot. I think that he has been incredibly detrimental to the perception of the coronavirus in the United States. Just let me know in Discord if you'd like to join. I'm going to go down to the phones channel right now. Again, please be respectful. And we'll let some folks come on in. So if you're on my Discord server, there is a voice channel that is called Phones. So if you actually join that channel, Phones, here, I'll just bring it. If you join Phones, which is right here, then I will drag you up to on air. That way we just have one. One person at a time. So if you'd like to join me on air, and I'd certainly like to have a discussion. A cosmic blip, I think like that's a really interesting topic. Is basically this. I wonder what would happen if the president had the coronavirus. I think it's kind of a fascinating thing to consider. No, if he tested positive for it, that would be all of the headlines. I mean, he's 74. He's 74. So again, if you'd like to come on and talk to me on air about this, I know you're out there. I know there's people that want to have this discussion, and this can't be a one-way discussion. So we've got It's Leo who's going to join us. So let me turn down the music even more and bring It's Leo up. Hey, Leo, how's it going, man?
Hi, how's it going? Sorry if my English is not good enough. Sorry for that.
It is. You do not need to apologize. My English isn't even that good, so it's okay. Can I call you Leo? Is that?
Yeah, sure,
okay.
Sure. That's how the people call me all the time.
Okay, great. So, Leo, tell me where you're from.
I'm from Venezuela.
Okay.
And no, tell me. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm just a little bit nervous about this.
No. Don't be nervous. We're just having a conversation. So I'm actually, one of the reasons why I wanted to have this discussion is because many of us are reading news and having discussions kind of in a vacuum, right? And one of the things that is so cool about Twitch is that I can talk to someone about this from Venezuela and get, your perspective, because I want to know how it's being perceived there. I'm very aware of how it's being perceived in the United States. So can you give us a little insight into? I'm trying to find even how many cases that you guys may have at the moment. Do you know?
Right now, a couple days ago, I just was reading about a case, the first case of coronavirus, but that was a lie.
Okay.
It was a lie because the coronavirus is just right now in the border of Venezuela. I mean, in the side of Colombia. There are some suspicious cases.
Okay.
But I don't know if that's true. I don't know.
So what is like the general, like, what is the news like in Venezuela? Are people are people concerned? Are you guys expecting to get your first case?
Well, everybody is just like all the world. I mean, if you know the coronavirus, you maybe won't expect the virus going to spread this way because we're not safe. We're part of the world. And I just thinking, if all the people seeing here, no, the coronavirus is on Colombia, that's near of us, they're going to still thinking the coronavirus is going to be direct to here. But I don't expect that because if one case comes here, we don't going to know it, if you're asking me. We didn't going to know it.
Right.
It's going to be something high.
Right. Which is kind of what has happened in a lot of countries in terms of like, lack of testing, maybe it taking a while before a first case is identified. And I think that's been pretty interesting, actually, is that I would venture to guess that the coronavirus is everywhere. It's just a question of like, have the people been tested and has it been confirmed that, people have this case, right? In the United States, they're saying that, I think we have like 500 cases or, 560 about. But the bigger question is like, because we don't have tests, because we have not been running as many tests as other countries, how many cases do we not know about? That's like a big question. And I think that applies to a lot of countries, around the world.
No, but I just thinking about the coronavirus has a time to comes out, right? Have
Right.
7 days, and I mean there is no test, no certainly test to be sure if you have the coronavirus. I mean, you only have to manifest. You can manifest many symptoms the cough, something like flu.
Right.
Flu. I don't know if I'm expressing using the right word. I don't know.
Yeah. They're flu-like symptoms. And then, right, I think like that's been another part of it is that some people who think they have it have actually just had the flu. And some people who thought they had the flu had the coronavirus. So they're similar, right?
Yeah. But one example, if you see me, I told you, I'm coming from Europe, and you hear me cough like now, you're gonna thinking, no, this guy have a coronavirus, but you didn't know because the reality is I'm choking with because I'm thirsty. I don't drink a lot of water. But the point is, it's the panic of the people and thinking they have a coronavirus near to us. It's like you have a person, you think 24/7, you have a person with coronavirus right by side of you, in a side of you. That's the panic because I think this virus is just gonna affect it more if you're still thinking you have it,
Right.
because you don't know, you're not you don't have the test to know if you have the coronavirus. And I don't know, I just still thinking that that sickness is not gonna be so fatalist. It's not the end of the world.
Right. Right. So would you say that your country is, is there panic? Like, are you seeing any signs of panic? For example, in the United States, it's hard to get
No,
No. People aren't
no.
going to the stores and buying all the hand sanitizer and toilet paper.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Well, all the countries just a little bit to not be not much into this because this is politic, and I don't want to be too far of the theme.
Right.
To be sure, this country is just a little bit a disaster. But yeah, we go to the store, we see all the we see a lot of products in how to say. On the stock, we see a lot of products on stock, and we buy it. It's a normal life right here. But because we take with provisions, like we wash our hands, we cover our mouths if someone just sneeze near of us. We take a lot of orange juice. It's my preferred, by the way. I take a lot because that's increases your defense from your body.
Right.
That's
Right.
that's D vitamin, my man.
So, one other question. How is it portrayed in the media where you are, right? Is there a lot of coverage?
Yeah, but just in case of China, just in Wuhan, because just countless time, I mean, a little bit moments of all the news, you say, and Europe have several cases, new cases on Africa or something like that.
Okay.
We just cover the media here in Venezuela just cover the big places about this virus because it's like a better source of information, I think.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's interesting because the coronavirus in the US, I would say, is about 75% of the news right now. And many people say that is a problem, right? That is causing that is causing maybe more panic or maybe more people to be concerned. I would agree with that if the narrative didn't change. And what I mean by that is that at first it was like you said, the reporting in Wuhan, what is happening in China, what is happening in Italy or South Korea. But the moment that the U.S. had its first cases, that is when sort of the news and the discussion changed a bit. So, one of the big things that's happening in the US right now is we don't have an adequate number of tests, right? So,
Yeah, yeah.
that is kind of the big deal is like how the CDC, which is like the organization in the United States that handles, diseases in these types of instances, how they have kind of failed the country to provide testing so that we can be better prepared. That has kind of added to some of the panic, confusion, and worry that people have. Because, then the question then becomes, well, how many people have this that we don't know about? So I'm not surprised that the coronavirus is kind of the top headline in the United States. A lot of people said, "Oh, it won't matter, right? We're in election months, and pretty soon the headlines will change." But they haven't for like 2 weeks at all. Um, yeah,
I don't know. All this team is like I just say all my friends, all his families, don't watch it all. No, don't watch all the news because the news is just gonna make you panicking a lot. Because when you see the news and you hear and you live in Canada and you hear the coronavirus is over there, you're gonna be panicked. You're gonna be out of the store and buy everything you see to it in case of emergency. But don't panic because panic is like the worst thing we can have right now because this is a deadly sickness, but it's have a cure. Some people have just cured about this.
right, right.
Uh,
Can I
it's
just,
like a
sorry, go ahead, go
yeah.
ahead.
No.
Oh, I
Tell
was
me.
going to
Sorry.
ask a question because I think this is also a good question, right? Because we keep using the word panic, right? And I'm
Yeah.
curious what you think panic is, right? Like what would you say how would your friend be acting or what would they be doing if you under your, if they were panicking?
No. How I say it? Well, here in Venezuela right now we have many people that go to another countries. They are immigrants,
Mhm.
and I just was seeing and hear the mom of my friend say, "No, don't go to Colombia because the coronavirus is over there. Why you don't stay here?" And my friend just say, "But mom, I have a job right there, and they're gonna pay me a lot. I'm gonna be stability, not like right here in Venezuela." And the mom just insists and insists and insists. I just see she like she really don't want his son just leave the country.
Sure.
But I just see my friend is he was so calm. But that's not my business, so I don't say anything. I just hear a little bit.
Right. Right. Okay. Well,
Uh,
Leo, I really appreciate you coming on and chatting with me about it. I wish you and all of Venezuela you know, I hope that you remain coronavirus free. That would be great. But thank you very much for joining me.
Yeah, no problem, man.
All right. All right. Well, take care. I'm gonna let some other folks on. Thank
Yeah,
you, Leo.
goodbye. Have a nice day.
Yep.
Well,
Bye bye. So we're gonna bring on One Hand Mostly next, but thank you, Leo. This is exactly right. Like it's really interesting. Here's a country that doesn't have confirmed cases. It's showing up in the news. You've still got some people who are panicked. Got some who are not, which I think is, a natural reaction. But we're going to keep having some conversations. And if you would like to join in on the discussion, hop into my Discord, join the phones channel, and then I will drag you up on air. Has panic, really quick, Cosmic Blip asks, has panic buying started in Nebraska yet? 100% yes. 100% it has happened. Whether it be food, whether it be disinfectant, those things are becoming very difficult to find. And just to put it into perspective, we didn't have our first case until late last week. Now, before I go any further, let me just take a quick look at the results. We were talking about this earlier. I'm going to bring One Hand Mostly on in just a moment. But here is the results so far. Do you agree with all the event cancellations? Now, take in mind, this is like a small survey of people from the channel. 67% of the votes say yes. Most of them say still uncertain. And there are a few people that say no, they do not agree with all the event cancellations. And we will, if someone else could share that poll for anyone who has just joined us, we'd love to get your thoughts on that, just to hear what you think about it. Let me bring in our next individual to have a conversation with. It is One Hand Mostly. Hello, One Hand Mostly.
Hello.
Welcome.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing good.
So, just so that we could provide some context for everyone, where are you from?
Houston.
Houston. Okay, so here in the U.S.
Yes.
Definitely excited to hear some other thoughts, comments, concerns, whatever, from someone who is also in the U.S. But what do you think about everything that's going on right now, especially as it relates to the reaction in the U.S.?
So it's kind of different. I have a different perspective. I'm a disabled individual, and I don't have like a compromised immune system, but like provide, people have to take care of me. I manage my own care staff and different things. And so I haven't really had any like contact with like the Health and Human Services or people that run the benefits or whatever, that like, if they have to quarantine people or people have to like stay home for a month. Like I know Twitch staff is staying home for a month or whatever. And so like no one says really said anything about how that's going to impact me. Like luckily I have family here in Houston and I'm close. So, like I could go, stay with them for a month and then like borrow their food and different things. But it's like, there's no really communication. And then all the panic buying on top of that with medical supplies and like gloves and different things as well is kind of different. Like most of our grocery shopping we do is like HEB has like you can order online, they'll deliver it to your door. So like you won't know until something's out until like maybe like an hour before. Sometimes you can like, they'll text you like you can change, different things. So like,
right.
It's weird panic buying toilet paper and different things like that. So trying to figure out, I got to figure it, like we usually do grocery like every 2 weeks or whatever. So like trying to figure that part out is a different experience, something we haven't really had to do. We for Hurricane Harvey, we lived with my in-laws for like 2 or 3 weeks because we didn't know how the flooding would be in our area. So I imagine it's going to be like that kind of scale. But like without the flooding part, like everyone's just stuck at their house,
right,
and not flooded. So it's an interesting experience as a disabled person to not really know. Like you kind of just have to adapt and see what the next step is. So
yeah. So I mean, let me ask you. I mean, based off of that, right? Like there seems to be a very polarizing, right, approach to this whole thing, which is either like, yes, I am concerned. This is something we should all be concerned about, And
Hmm.
there's another side that's just like, nah, it's not much worse than the flu. People are
Hmm.
making kind of too big of a deal out of this. Um,
Hmm.
and I totally understand if you don't want to sort of reveal your full position, but like on that spectrum, where do you feel like you fall?
I'm probably in the middle. Like as of
Okay.
like before South by Southwest was canceled, we were gonna go to the gaming part. I create YouTube for accessibility reviews and games and stuff for people with disabilities and different things, and I was gonna go to network and stuff like that. And so, um, as of last week, I was gonna go. I flew to Seattle like in January, before like the whole explosion in the Pacific Northwest kind of exploded with their cases and everything. And so I wasn't as nervous about it as I am, I guess, more now as Houston has gotten more. Like a lady that taught at Rice went on a
Mm.
Nigerian cruise or something and they went to class for 2 days. And so like now Rice is all online for like the whole week. So now they're setting up online classes and different things. And then the wife also teaches, or doesn't teach, but she works in this local school district here. So, like, she's exposed a lot more than I am. I mean, I was working remotely, but now, ironically, I'm going into a new job and going into the office. So, I'm going back into the office now instead of working from home. So, I'm not like I don't really get worried about it, but it is like concerning to try to figure out like how am I going to get up and do things day to day. I think that's
Right.
where most of my concern is how is my day to day going to look versus like if I get sick, I get sick, I guess. But
Yeah, I mean, I can like somewhat relate because I am an employee who already works remotely. So
mhm,
it's weird because in some ways, Amazon did make the declaration that like they want people to work from home, right? They
yeah,
want to do what they can. Thankfully, we're kind of a technology company, so we have the infrastructure to be able to do that. But
right,
I that aspect hasn't really disrupted my life. But I think about I have a 14-year-old son. I'm hearing a lot of other places, whether that be like you mentioned, Rice, like saying, "Hey, we're gonna try to go digital. We're gonna go online for the next month or whatever."
mhm,
And I think that's awesome. Like I really am happy that there are schools, there are institutions that have the ability and the technology to do that. But I
mhm,
also know that there are a lot of schools, a lot of institutions that do not, right? And
right,
and that could have a disruption on education. So I certainly like appreciate the fact that some schools are like, "Hey, we can do this. Let's just take the precautions." While
yeah,
others are, I understand why they have not maybe pulled that trigger yet and said we're going to do that. I want to ask you about one other topic that I think has been really big in the U.S. media,
okay,
and that is the idea because this was something that early on I was kind of really racking my brain over. I didn't understand why it wasn't a larger part of the conversation, and that is sort of the idea of the number of tests that the U.S. has actually done and
mhm,
the lack of testing that we've had available. Um,
mhm.
what are your your thoughts on that? If you have any.
Um, that's a good question. I know I watched. I think John Oliver did a really good episode last week. If you're looking for a good take. He did an episode on his take on the coronavirus last week. I think I remember seeing or something that either someone got infected in the CDC and the plant that was making the test. I don't know if that was even true or not, and that might have slowed down um, the production of it. And then I don't think there's like a real plan of like when you should go to the doctor, or I know there's like a phone line possibly you can call as well. Like if you think you have symptoms, so I think there's not like a real like step to step like what should I do because every state has different healthcare sometimes, and then everyone has different insurance and different
Yeah.
things. Like I'm on state benefits, like that's a different procedure than if you have insurance through Twitch, and so different or Amazon or whatever. So like I don't think there's like a set like okay if you have symptoms you need to do 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way down the list. It's like there's a phone line, then you call that, or you call your doctor, you call the ER, and then people just go to the ER. And then if you're in the ER and you do have it, then you've just exposed like a bunch of people. So like there's no like clear cut like direction from the top that is helping measure the cases and test the cases, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with you. That's been some of the problems. Some of it is the mixed messages that we've actually gotten from government officials. Some of it is, like you mentioned, right? There's no rule book. There's no one sheet with 5 steps that says, "Hey, this is what happens." So I absolutely agree with that. I think it's also interesting in that there's been a lot of people, and what I have found fascinating is listening to the doctors speaking out, right? Because I think doctors and physicians, right, they're on the front lines to all of this. They are the ones that would know best about like how easy it is to get a test, and so. I've been listening to a lot of those opinions. And I think one of the things that bothers me the most is that, we were so concerned about community transmission, right? And just as a quick aside for those that may not understand is that the bigger concern with the coronavirus was when we can track it, and say, okay, this person traveled to Italy, right? Or they traveled to China. And so it makes sense that they were exposed there and then they came back. And where it really becomes a problem is when, a 16-year-old kid who has no travel record has then gotten the coronavirus or has tested positive, because in those cases, then it may be harder to trace. And it means that there was some sort of communal spread of that thing. So one of the things that has, I wouldn't say scared me, but concerned me is that physicians have said, hey, I have got someone who clearly has all of the symptoms. However, I cannot get them tested because they don't have a travel history to any of the outbreak countries. And that just has been very confusing to me. That might just mean that that's a byproduct of a lack of tests. That might mean that is just because, I don't know. At that point, I'm only speculating. But it's certainly sort of fascinating to see the doctors and hear the doctors talk about that. I'm hoping that this week that gets a lot better, because I do believe that we are going to have more access to tests, more labs that are getting involved, that are able to do the testing. But like, to put it into perspective, when you hear that South Korea is testing like 10,000 people a day, and as a result of their intense testing, their numbers are going down. They might be the only region where numbers are significantly going down. And that has to be due to the amount of testing that's happening. So I find that aspect, very interesting. And it's hard, right, to find all of the factual information around that.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's with social media and everything. There's so many different websites and Twitter and everything where you can grab your information. It's hard to verify like what's real and what's not. And then when the president goes on and says go to work and just use a really good flu vaccine, different things like that, there's so much can be misinformation out there that can is creating and contributing to the panic. Do you
think that we could have had? Do you think the government could have had a better job, and or do you think that there are any fallacies in how they have handled this situation thus far in the United States?
I mean, I think they definitely downplayed it, for sure. I don't underestimate that. I think if they would have taken it seriously, and maybe even China downplayed it as well, and look what happened there. So maybe they got cocky and said, "Oh, we're big bad U.S. and we can deal with anything." And so, which I think that's Trump's MO, period.
Right.
And so,
I mean, I would have loved to seen the flip side where there was confidence and cockiness, but that came with and we've got 10 billion tests. So literally, if you do want to walk into a Walgreens or a CVS or your local physician, boom, here you go. You're going to get a test. How much less panic would we have if that was available, right? If you're concerned, then go get that test.
Exactly.
So I do agree with you on that. So, well, I I don't know if you have any other thoughts, comments. Has there been anything else that's sort of been of interest to you regarding this, and anything else you'd like to say?
No, I think it's kind of interesting to I guess kind of go through it, like how different aspects of our lives are like increasing, like everything that we do when we stay home, like Netflix is going up and Peloton and all these different things and companies where it involves you staying home. And then if you have to go out in the world and different things, it's going to be interesting. Like is it going to be a ghost town like fast food? Is that going to go away? Can we even order DoorDash and different things? Like I remember showing, like in the John Oliver video, they showed a guy ordering it, like they took the body temperature of like the people that delivered your food, who made the food, and then like he puts it on like the bike, and then he walks away, and then you go in there to like, it's almost like a hostage situation, and they go in and you go in and grab your food, and then you go away. So it's a really cool video from last week tonight. Last week I think he did it.
I'll have to check that one out. I mean that like
really
that is interesting, right? There's no doubt. I did read something, a comment. Now, granted, it came from Reddit, but it was a thought-provoking comment, and it said, that the coronavirus has grown to be a situation in which, similar to 9/11, we had a world before 9/11 and we had a world after 9/11, right? And in that particular case, the airlines, right? Like what we used to do to go through the airports has drastically changed as a result of an event that took place in the United States. And this person said that this particular event has reached a point in which like the post-coronavirus world will change, right? That like we will change as a world because of the things that have happened. And that, I mean, like, I see that as a positive thing, like, right? Like, we're going to be more prepared if anything like this ever happens again, right? We're going to, and we're like, yes, medical advancements have happened and have been great and et cetera, but at some point we have to, we all have to, right, agree that there's still so much about medicine. There's still so much about health and that we don't understand, that we're still learning about. This here is showing us that how something that is of a virus, right, can like spread due to the nature of how international we are as a planet, right? Like people are flying to different countries all the time. Like Wuhan might have been the place of the outbreak, but like to see it now have spread on the level that it has. Also just the effect that social media has had on this particular thing, not only with the spread of information, but also the spread of misinformation. So I do think like that's a very fascinating aspect to this. And I do hope that we continue to learn, and that if we do change, we change intelligently for the better in this post-coronavirus world. So
Definitely.
One hand mostly, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it. And I thank you for coming on and sharing your thoughts and feelings on this. So good luck to
Yes,
you
sir.
and your family.
Thank you, and you too.
All right. Take care, man.
All right, too.
All right. This has been great. This is exactly what I kind of hope to get. I'm just going to do a quick refresh and see if our votes have changed at all. Still about the same. A lot of people do agree with the event cancellations. Some still uncertain. Got a couple more folks that want to join in. I think Mr. Kaji was first. So Dead Baby Seal, I'll get you next, but let me bring on Mr. Kaji next. Mr. Kaji, hello. Welcome to the fields. You're muted. Hello.
Hey there.
How's it going?
Can you hear me properly?
I can. Yes, I can.
Good. Okay. How you doing?
I'm doing good. It's kind of nice to have these discussions, and I appreciate everyone calling and giving their thoughts. And so, Mr. Kaji, tell me just again for context, where you from?
Sure. So I'm from Italy.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm very, I said this morning when I kind of woke up, I said to myself, like, I would really like to talk to someone in Italy, right? Because like, obviously, lockdown was announced. I believe that was about 2 days ago. Curious to hear how that's affected you all, what your perception and thoughts are. So lay it on me. I am all ears. I'm really curious to hear how things are going for you.
Yeah, man, where do I even begin? So, first thing, I'm not in any of the affected areas.
Okay.
So I'm not in any of the red zones.
And it's northern Italy that is kind of like the most affected?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much most of the northern part of the country. I'm closer to Rome, so the first effects that we've been seeing here have actually happened like today, after this big announcement from the government. So this thing has been growing pretty steadily in the past couple weeks, and I don't even know where to start, man. I feel like
Well, let me.
so huge.
Yeah, I totally understand. Like, it can be really overwhelming. So let's like start with let's go back in time a little bit, right? Because it wasn't too long ago that Italy was just kind of reporting its first cases. And I mean, even from my perspective, it just seemed weird, right? We were hearing all this news about China, and then suddenly like Italy announces its first cases. And then, those cases started mounting and they started getting larger. So one of the questions I have is, are you aware of I have to believe that Italy's had some pretty good testing resources in order to even report these numbers. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. The first confirmed case, I think it was on the 21st of February, but things started ramping up around the 28th. About 2 weeks ago. And from the moment that it seemed like that it became evident that the thing was spreading, there has been a huge effort in testing. Like to this day, there have been tens of thousands of tests. And as you can see, right there, total cases, and that 7,375, that also counts people that have recovered and that have passed away. So the people that are right now affected are a little bit over 6,000. I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm pretty sure we're over 30,000 tests by now.
Which is incredible. Like, I give Italy an incredible amount of props, because that is, 1,000 or 1,500% over the amount of tests that we have done in the United States, and is much closer to South Korea, who, again, as we mentioned earlier, is like on a decline because of their aggressive testing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the effort in the first days has been huge, to the point where there was an actual risk of running out of supplies.
So testing was good, but obviously, like, good testing, as we have seen, usually leads to more cases. So it's not necessarily that like, oh, Italy is dirty and look at all this outbreak. It's like, no, because Italy has been on top of it. Therefore, they have been able to identify more cases. I mean, that's how I interpret that data. So, obviously, then you said 2 weeks kind of go by. I'm curious to hear your perspective on sort of what that 2 weeks was like as these cases begin to grow. And I think the two major questions I have for you, and feel free to go wherever you want to go, but like, did Italy experience a sense of panic? Like, how is the country in that regards now? And then also, I'm just really curious to hear what people's sentiment is about sort of the lockdown scenario that has now been presented. So let's start first with like those 2 weeks as the cases started to grow. Was there panic? How did you feel about it? How did the people around you feel about it, etc.?
All right. So as for me, at the beginning, I downplayed it a little bit. I didn't give it that much weight, and then it actually started seeming like it was something serious. So for the first few days, I didn't actually really care about the news or anything. But once it started spreading to, like, After the first few days, it became evident that the thing was growing exponentially. Whereas at first it didn't seem the case. It seemed like there were isolated spots where there were cases. Once it started being exponential, it actually was clear that it was something to pay attention to. And as for panic and hysteria, yeah, absolutely, all over the place. Like as soon as the news started coming out of it spreading at a steady pace, at least in northern Italy, people assaulted supermarkets. Like it's actually kind of weird. Like the first few days after the news were the most panicky, and then things kind of calmed down because clearer news started coming out, and people started having a better idea of what was actually going on, right? So yeah, the first few days, so the end of February and the beginning of March, it was a bit of a mess,
Right.
especially in the most affected areas. Then it got a bit better because it seemed like things were under control. And since yesterday, I would say, when these new measurements have taken place, things feel like they may be getting a bit more panicky again. Because there's basically a huge lockdown on a big part of northern Italy, and there are restrictive measures throughout the whole country.
Right. I just scrolled down to that for those who are watching. Some of those restrictions include schools and universities being closed, museums and other, sort of places of culture and tourism are closed. Cinemas, pubs, theaters, dance schools, game rooms, casinos, nightclubs remaining closed. So, I mean, not only that obviously has a big impact on sort of local economy, but in terms of like how that impacts your life, I'm like really interested in that, especially considering that you say, I'm like not necessarily even in the the super restricted areas, but what sort of impact are you seeing? Because I'm not surprised to hear that those type of restrictions brought some of the panic back.
Yeah. So keep in mind that this is been enforced since less than 2 days, less than 48 hours. So it's a bit early to actually feel it. Like you can see it, of course, but it's not really shaking up your everyday until I think a week passes. And also, I want to point out that all these things about schools and university being closed and events being suspended, all this is going to be taking place until at least April the 3rd, so for a full month. And there is an option that it gets even furthered. So it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah. It's like there's an end, but there's also a complete possibility that could be extended, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. So that definitely does not help with feeling tranquil about the situation. And that's especially for business, like pubs and restaurants that have to shut down or that have very restricted measures. This is a really big deal. There are expected to be tax breaks, but is that going to be enough? Actually, that's one big thing that's missing. The fact that businesses are going to be affected in a huge way. Of course, for the most part in northern Italy, but in the whole country. And so far, there hasn't really been a really strong and clear action taken to state how they're going to be supported.
Right. And you don't think that's necessarily because there's not going to be action, but more so that this is not like a common occurrence, right? Like, I mean, what nation anywhere in the world has ever said, "Hey, we need to think about," right? Like
exactly
closing all of this stuff, right? Like, I mean,
not really something you plan for.
It's not. It's not. It's weird because it kind of represents the actions of like a cataclysmic event, which it is, but it isn't. But it's having this massive effect. So, I mean, I definitely sympathize for not only the entire country but also sort of the leadership in like wanting to be able to make the right decision to take care of the citizens and the economy. But right, it's not like we could say, oh, hey, let's look back at 50 years ago when this happened and how we handled it
Yeah.
then, right? That's
Yeah,
super
it's so
fascinating.
improvised. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you right, like what's the when you think about your family or your friends, like even yourself,
Yeah.
you know, where do you and some of your friends and some of the people that you talk to, like how do you look at this on a scale of concern? Like are people willing to make all of these changes and or adhere to all this? You know, one of the things that we heard over here is that and I found this interesting is that, again, because this is not something that happens, right? A country going into lockdown. I heard an interesting story about how, Italian officials weren't sure how to even enforce it, right? Like, I
Exactly.
mean,
Yeah.
do we shoot people if they decide not to do this? Do we like put them in jail, right? And that also puts a stress on the country. What's
Yeah.
kind of the thoughts on that?
So, okay, as far as what I've seen, things feel like they're changing since these new measurements have been approved, and it seems like they're gonna be enforced right now. So, because there were restrictive measures already in the red zones in the north before this Sunday, and then there were, I wouldn't even know how to describe them, like recommendations to the rest of the country.
Right.
Okay, so like to stay at 1 meter, so 3 feet distance, not to hug or kiss, and stuff like that. But it was not actually something that could be enforced because it was not. There was no document, nothing signed, nothing official.
Sure.
And actually, has changed now. So things are going to change. Like, and I actually, based on the people I've talked to, the way this is being perceived has changed after the official measures have been taken yesterday.
Huh. So when you say
Like it felt more unofficial before these actually came out.
Right.
Whereas now there is an actual, like, it's kind of a special law. Forgive me for not knowing the technical term, but there is something actual. There is an official thing that has been enforced right now in the whole country, and that changes the perception.
So with that perception change, do you feel like there is unity amongst people, right? Because I guess what I'm trying to say is that, like you mentioned, right, it was sort of an unofficial declaration, sort of like, hey, you maybe be thinking about doing this stuff, and that just kind of, right, people have their opinions, great, whatever. When it becomes a government sanctioned recommendation or issued order, have you seen more unity in Italy? Is there any are people like, no, fuck you, I'm not going to shut my bar, or like, is there any discourse?
So I would say it's too early to judge,
Okay.
since it's only been in effect for 36 hours. But I would expect both things, right? So there will definitely be people who are more willing to comply, and at the same time, there are going to be people who just downplay it.
Okay. I got a couple more questions. So,
Sure.
one of the things that I've experienced on social media, I've experienced sort of in other ways is, to your point about downplaying, right? One of the reasons why I have a concern is because, my wife does have bad asthma, right? Anything that is respiratory that affects her is going to affect her more than a normal person, right? Like if
Yeah.
we both got it, I would be way more worried about her because of her asthma. So, like I get like moderately offended and or upset when people are like, oh, it's not that big of a deal because obviously this affects me. It hits, it hits close to home.
Yeah.
Being in Italy, seeing this play out, when you see those comments, oh, it's not that big deal, it's just a flu, right? Like this has affected you as a country and you as a citizen more than, a lot of other people in a lot of other countries. So what's kind of your thoughts on that? Like, are you surprised that people say that? And do you think that their tune would change if they were in Italy and something like what is happening to you all happens to them? Any sort of general thoughts on that?
Okay, so I think that can depend either on, there are a bunch of reasons why people could react like that, and it doesn't personally bother me. I would say it's for sure misinformation plays a part in that. But also I think that in some cases it's a way to try to react to the thing, right? Yeah, okay, it's not that big of a deal. Let's not worry. Like people telling that themselves to not lose hope, right?
Right. Fair enough. Yeah, I do think there's some of that, right? Like there's probably some that's right. Denial is a natural state of sort of the feelings that you might go through on that. I think others are, at least in the United States, where we have talked about how the coronavirus has come incredibly politicized because, right, there's a lot of people that are like, oh, no, they're just right. Like we're in election year. So a lot of the bullshit that's happening is due to like the election aspects of it. And, I like, obviously I understand why people make some of those statements. But it's just very, very interesting to see the polarization across the board. So I can understand that. Yeah. Well,
Tell me.
no, I just, well, keep going. I mean, like you'd mentioned like, there's some people that would say it, but, is there any advice that you would give to someone who maybe today is, say in the United States or they're in a country where, maybe there's just a couple cases, right? Like, do you think that we all need more sensitivity to this? Or do you think that it is okay that people are just kind of like, not that big of a deal?
So I don't think I'm really to give recommendation on this. I'm no expert on the matter, but I definitely think that more information it's always a plus. It's always a good thing, right? So being informed and being careful, it's nothing that could hurt. And unless it becomes an extreme, then obviously, as every extreme, it's going to be harmful. But being careful is okay. Like one thing that I think I can say that could probably be okay. As far as perception goes, of the risk that this thing poses, right? I feel like that there is a point of view that's missing, because I hear a lot of people being really concerned about their own health or health of people close to them, but that's not the whole picture. Like the way I see it, there are two levels of concern, the two levels of risk in this whole situation, and the first level is personal level. So the people most affected, as you said earlier already, are people who already have some respiratory issues or people that are old, like 70, 80, and already have pathologies.
Right.
Those are the people who are going to be more at risk for their own personal health, right? Apart from those people, there is a good chance that if you get it, you're not really going to have a bad time. Like you're going to make it through. So already keeping that in mind, I think it's good. It's good to realize that, if you're a 30-year-old with no health issues, you shouldn't really be worried about yourself, but about spreading it to people who are more vulnerable than you.
Right.
And that's it. And on another level, though, I think that there is another risk and this is on an economic scale. The fact that this thing forces entire areas to shut down, basically, to avoid spreading. Why does that happen? Because the virus spreads really quickly,
Mm-hmm.
and that causes a lot of cases that need treatment in intensive care unit. So that tends to overwork hospitals, and that's a problem.
Right.
Like that's the real risk, that the sanitary system, the health system, is going to be overworked really soon if this keeps spreading at this pace, and that the measures that are going to have to be taken to contain it can cause big damage to the economy of the areas affected. So, but those are two different things, right? Personal and economic life.
That is actually a perspective that I think, believe it or not, I've heard a lot of that perspective coming from the doctors and physicians, specifically in the United States.
Okay.
Right? There's basically two big concerns. The first one is that the lack of testing, which again, we hope that this week that will significantly ramp up in our country so that we can have a much clearer idea of not only like the status quo effect, but then also to be a bit more prepared for, what kind of a spread and what kind of resources that we will need. The other part that I have seen is, like, people say that we have this great, like at least from an infrastructure perspective, medical infrastructure, but that doesn't necessarily take into account people who don't have insurance, right? People who have to pay out of pocket for these types of things too. And it has been very enlightening to hear some of the doctors and physicians say, if we were in a scenario where X number of people were infected, we would have a very, very difficult time, right, keeping up with the demand in terms of like, helping people with these respiratory problems. And I think like that's a concern. But again, because we haven't reached the level with the numbers, people are not necessarily making that something in the forefront. So I do actually think that, to me, it's comforting to hear you bring up that perspective, because I would say, Italy is probably closer to, I'm sure that your resources from a medical perspective have been pushed to limits that, maybe had not been previously.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Kaji, I really appreciate your thoughts. I mentioned earlier, I really wanted to get someone who is on from Italy. I really appreciate you coming and informing us and giving us a perspective that, we don't quite get. And you made you made a comment earlier about sort of, and maybe it was a previous caller, about sort of like Netflix increasing and Peloton increasing. And I'm sure that Twitch is going to have more people watching, right? Because of the effect that we're staying inside. But like, I'm also super appreciative that like we live in this virtual world where we can get opinions and we can talk about this with people all around the world. So Mr. Kaji, thank you so much, not only for being a supporter at all times, but coming on and sharing your thoughts with us. So.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Take care, man. Bye-bye. All right. It's really great. We're gonna keep taking some calls. So we've got Dead Baby Seal up next, and then we're gonna bring on Hardman. So thank you all who are in the phones channel for being patient. If you would like to join us, I'm going to be going about for another hour. I would love to get some more perspectives. All you need to do is join my Discord, and there's a channel that's called Phones, and you can join that, and then I will drag you up to the on-air channel. Also want to just say thank you for everyone in chat being respectful. I realize that we are people of many opinions, and I've seen opinions across the entire spectrum of today. But most importantly, like, I'm glad that it's not fighting in Discord, and I see intelligent thoughts, ideas, and perspectives being given. So thank you for that. Let's continue with our conversations. I'm going to bring Dead Baby Seal on. Hopefully this Dead Baby Seal is not dead from the coronavirus. Okay, that was a bad joke. But dead baby seal. Hello, good morning or afternoon, or I don't know where you might be from. But thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's morning. I'm in Los Angeles.
Okay. The LA Marathon took place yesterday, correct?
I actually don't know. I don't really keep up with things.
All right. Well, I was kind of watching because I was in LA earlier this last week, and I know that was kind of one of the things of discussion. As far as I know, it did happen. But anyway, welcome. And what are your sort of thoughts on what is going on today with the coronavirus?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. I think it's really important to recognize that everybody's feelings are valid. It can be really like tempting, I think, when stuff like this is going on to like tell other people that their opinion is wrong about something or something like that. And when people are panicked or they're scared, like that has a lot to do with I think like the way that person like lived their life and like what the things that happened to them and stuff like that. Like some people are a lot more scared of things like this than other people, and like they're, regardless of whether you think they're like overreacting or not, they're like, those feelings are something that they can't control. Like you don't choose to feel a feeling. So like I think we can try to be compassionate to people that we may feel are overreacting or underreacting.
I really appreciate that perspective, just because I want to say, like, I definitely have felt with a few of the comments that I have, publicly made. A lot of people have said you are overreacting or the situation has been overkill or, and so I think it's always important too, is that we can give more context in these situations. Right. And I've made it pretty clear that like, my wife has underlying respiratory issues. So of course I have a heightened concern than I think just an average individual who may not have that. So, and I think that is important. And thank you for reiterating that and expressing that, because I 100% agree.
Yeah. It's funny. I think we're in the same boat. My wife also has some respiratory issues. And so, yeah, I am concerned. I mean, I don't like spend all of my day like worrying about like what's going to happen, but I mean, it is concerning to think about. And I still have 3 living grandparents. Like it's kind of amazing, actually. I'm in my 30s and 3 of my grandparents are alive, and that means they're all over 80.
That is pretty impressive. That is. Yeah.
I'm already like basically like mentally prepared to lose at least like 2 of them, because I think. I at this point, my opinion is that like the cat is out of the bag. Like it's out there spreading. Like there's no containing it at this point. So I feel pretty prepared to lose those people, and I don't think that's like an overreaction. Like the mortality rate is pretty high when you get that high. Just look at what happened with the nursing home up in Washington.
Right.
So I think that I feel pretty middle of the road about it. Like I feel like a lot of people are going to be fine, but a lot of people are going to die. And like a lot of people, I think, are only thinking about themselves. They're like, oh yeah, it's not going to really affect me. It's just like a mild flu or whatever. But I don't think they really think about the fact that without a vaccine, the flu would be a lot more deadly. I mean, like the flu would sweep through our nations like every year and kill like thousands and thousands and thousands of people. It actually still does, even though we have vaccines.
Right. Yeah.
Thousands and thousands of people are going to die. Like that's gonna happen. We have to face that reality, I think.
Yeah, it is an exceptionally good point, because we're all very aware that the entire world is actively working towards a vaccine. A vaccine is not something that like one scientist is like, oh shit, we got it, and then overnight, suddenly, right? There's extensive testing that takes place. In fact, I began reading up a little bit more about that, because admittedly, like I didn't know, right? It made sense to me that it would take a while to develop a vaccine, but when you learn a little bit more about what goes into it in terms of like the stages of clinical testing that they go into and why they do that, because something that, may vaccinate you and I in our 30s and 40s may not be the right answer to someone who is a little bit older, right? Like it could have effects on other systems, etc. So I was happy to learn a little bit more about that, but at the same time, I think that's another great point that needs to be made, is that while we are working diligently towards, a vaccine that will hopefully minimize this as we move forward, it's possible that even in the next 12, 18 months, that when we're getting our flu shot next year, that we're also getting a separate vaccination specifically for this, right? And
Yeah, for sure.
but I think
I
that's a good
actually,
point.
do you have thoughts on like the long-term outcome here? Like I'm not really sure what to expect from this. I don't think anyone is, but I think there are a lot of possibilities for where this goes, like on the scale of years, right? Like I think it is entirely possible that this just becomes a seasonal thing, and you have to get a vaccine, like just like the flu shot, and to prevent against the latest mutation of the coronavirus.
My thoughts on this, which may have changed and or morphed over the past month or so. So admittedly, like I am not someone who has traditionally gotten a flu shot over the last few years. This year I was in the doctor's office. He's like, "Hey, you're here. We might as well give you the flu shot." I'm never going to be like, "No, don't," I was just not necessarily actively going out. And usually my normal doctor checkups didn't necessarily coincide with, the flu season, right? I had my appendix taken out this winter. So like it kind of put me in the doctor's office, outside of my normal cycles. But I think like I have thought a lot about that. And I do first, 2 points I want to say to what you mentioned is that I think that it's been really interesting to watch a lot of the world talk about this from a week perspective to what is going to happen in a month to what is going to happen in a year, right? Like we've seen quote unquote exponential growth of the spread and the things going on. But I think now people are really starting to exponentially think about the long-term effects of this. And so, yes, I do think that it's going to, I made a comment earlier that that was based off of something someone else said, in that what we have experienced already, and we're just kind of sort of scratching the surface, is that we are going to live in a quote unquote post-coronavirus world, right? Where it's like everything that's happening now is going to have an adverse effect on everything, from a global perspective moving forward in the same way. And it might be an extreme comparison, but to the same way that like 9/11 had an effect on security and some of the different ways that we were approaching, those types of things. So, yes, I do agree with that on a pretty deep level. The other thing that, and I think I just lost my train of thought, but the other thing in terms of like the effect is obviously the economic effect, the educational effect, right? Like as a parent and hearing more about school closings.
Let me tell you about some school closure stuff actually. So I know 2 different professors at different schools, and I also know someone who's like the head of like the institutional technology department at a big major university. And like it's crazy, dude. Like the all of these people are working crazy overtime to like try to figure out how to do like classes online, or like they're trying to figure out if they need to close all the schools. And this is like here in LA, like where like the virus isn't even like really spreading around. People are really kind of like freaking out.
So the thing that bothers me, and again, this is from my own personal experiences, right? I was just in San Francisco for 5 years, and admittedly, they have a lot of problems with the educational system out there. A lot of that has to do with the socioeconomical aspects of San Francisco as a city, the fact that teachers don't get paid enough to live in the city. So it already causes a disruption when a teacher has to live, 20 miles away. It takes them an hour to commute into work, and the effect that can have on, being in class, etc. But I can say with 1,000% confidence that if the school that my son attended for only about 3 months, because we ended up pulling him and homeschooling, that school, I know for a fact, would not be able to make those changes to have those online classes, right? And then the question becomes like, are the students even equipped, right, to be able to take those classes digitally? Maybe some, probably not all. Versus where I'm in now in the Midwest, where arguably the schools are much better. A lot more of the money flows into the system. They are much more technologically advanced than these specific schools that I was exposed to in San Francisco were. So just experiencing that, right, has been, it almost makes me uncomfortable because, like, while I can sit here and confidently go like, yeah, if Mini-Wheat's school decided to shut down tomorrow, A, I'm not worried because he's used to taking classes online. We homeschooled for 4 years. But B, I know that the school has the resources to be able to do that. But it sits pretty uncomfortably with me knowing that that is not the case across the United States, let alone, globally, where that would be something that I don't believe that every educational system could hear. So we already have this huge gap between educational systems in the United States and other countries. Like, how much more does that begin to widen that gap? It's, that might be reaching like conspiracy level theories, this sort of ways of thinking, but it's concerning to me because I've been exposed to the educational system in a lot of different capacities and I've seen it firsthand. So to me, it just seems like, oh my gosh, this is a problem that, 5 years ago, I don't know if I would have even been aware of or been able to identify, but having gone through some of these things over the last 5 years, it kind of breaks my heart a little bit. That's a little rough.
Yeah, totally. I really don't think most schools are prepared for anything like this.
What do you think, right? We've had someone from Venezuela, someone from Italy, someone from the U.S. You're the second person I've talked to here in the U.S. What do you think about sort of, right? There's no doubt that the coronavirus has come, is not only a crisis that we are dealing with, but it is also now has a lot of political threads that are running through this whole thing, right? We have...
You mean like because it's election season?
I mean, right? Like, because it's election season. And I want to preface this by saying, look, right? Like, we cannot read into the minds or the motivations or the intentions of our government officials. But what we do know is that we've got incredibly conflicting reporting that's come out from all sides, right? I'm not just like trying to throw Trump blame around or anything. Like, it's been a pretty consistent in terms of an inconsistent message. But I very early on started asking that question about like, dude, South Korea is testing 10,000 people a day. And according to where we're at, at one point we sat at 500 and then we like bopped up to like 2,000. And this is supposed to be the week that, heavy testing really starts to go into effect. But what do you kind of think about that aspect? Because I don't think it's unique to the United States, but I definitely feel like it's having a much larger impact because it is that election season. And it seems like it's opening up new narrative for people to introduce that either downplays the situation or maybe misdirects the situation. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's in one sense it's really unfortunate timing for the US because not that there's ever a fortunate time to have a pandemic.
Of course.
But in terms of the U.S., like I think it is unfortunate because it like the country's already divided because it's like more divided because it's an election season already,
Right.
and then there's these narratives that are getting sprinkled in, and like people blowing things out of proportion or downplaying things or whatever it is, and trying to angle these narratives to for political gain, and so I do think that's kind of unfortunate. I also think that it's fortunate in a certain sense because I think it like hopefully will maybe open some eyes, maybe like that we I don't know. I just feel like the U.S. is so divided. It's like what do we have to like actually have happen to us to like realize that like we gotta fucking work together, guys.
I like yeah. You know what? I actually was thinking about this the other day because at least when 9/11 happened, and I know I've like brought that up today, but believe it or not, I see some parallels, right, that are interesting, right? Like that was a time when it seemed like the nation was one, right? It seemed like this happened to us as a nation. I didn't feel that separation. I felt like it was much less political, maybe in the moment, right? Like, not to say that certainly it didn't become political as we got further away from that instance. But that's interesting to me, right? Like, have we hit critical mass yet? And if we do hit critical mass, would that bring us together more? And this is where my commentary on our current leader does change, because like frankly, I think if we had a more empathetic leader, that things would be a lot different than they are now. Like I don't feel super reassured because of some of the confusion, because of some of the mixed messages, etc. And again, like I won't say names, but I do feel like if I was president, I would want to be getting in front of the fucking cameras every day and being like, like this is bad. We do need to come together. We need to be as one. We need to help each other out. If you see people in need, then you like act.
It should be like priority zero. Like everything else is shelved. If I was president, like, this
exactly.
Be like the only thing I was dealing with 24/7, even when I'm sleeping.
Like I want to believe that there's a world where the best leader is like, I don't give a fuck if I'm reelected, right? Like the nation is my priority now. And again, like I don't necessarily want to turn this all into a political debate, but I feel like it's hard because that has been so introduced to the narrative. But I do feel like that is one area that we have been denied that from our leaders. And, I think other leaders in like the local and state governments have been doing a much better job, but that still doesn't solve all of our problems, right? Like we might unify as a community, as a state, as a county, but it does feel like we are still very much separated because of the political climate that we're in.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Can I say two more things?
Yes, absolutely. Please. Yeah.
So, kind of along that same lines, I feel like, so I want to say about a year ago, for some strange reason, I got really into researching like hypothetical doomsday scenarios, as one does when they're browsing YouTube or Wikipedia.
Sure.
And Disease X is like a pretty well-known hypothetical like world disaster scenario. And this is like the first time we've ever seen a Disease X scenario. And it feels like, in a sense, I feel like we should treat this as like a reminder that like, while science isn't really perfect, like people have been talking about something like this being a possibility for years and years and years and years. And so maybe we should take science kind of seriously when it tells us that like something like this could happen, like climate change or Disease X or something like that. And we should be perhaps less political about those things because it's right more often than it's wrong.
I mean, can I ask you, because you've done some of that like research and or just exposed yourself to sort of, learning more about that, does a lot of it come down to people just believing like, A, this can't happen to us, or B, you're just talking crazy.
I think it's a combination of a lot of things. So I think some of it is people think it can't happen to them because we live in a world that's very free from threats, like generally speaking. Like there's not a lot of like background threats in your day-to-day life that could just like suddenly end your life. So people really, really try hard, and I think this is a culture problem in the US. We just really try hard not to think about dying.
Right.
And it's literally going to happen to all of us one way or another. Even if you figure out how to become immortal, you'll die when the universe experiences heat death. Like everybody's going to die. It doesn't matter. And we really, really, really try hard not to think about that and to like do everything possible to frantically avoid the possibility of dying. But I think that's because like we've got this idea that it just can't happen to us. And I think that's just because we're generally so safe. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah,
I don't
sure.
really have any real risks as I walk around. So it's, the idea of something bad befalling me is pretty remote.
I mean, to kind of echo what you're saying, and again, going back to an example that I keep bringing up, but like we have now, at least in the United States, again, speaking from this perspective, because I know that like, right, this is not a globally shared perspective, but like, there was a time in like the Cold War era where, wars had sort of simmered down. We hadn't had anything that had sort of like an actual on soil impact. And then, 9/11 happens and suddenly it's like, oh shit, like this is all a reality, right? Yeah.
Like suddenly it's on American soil and it's like actually in our backyard.
And while I understand where people are like, yo, I got my own problems, I got my own shit to worry about, I'm living paycheck to paycheck. Like I don't expect, people to take all of these things and be 100% informed and aware in every single case and scenario. But I do believe that we at least need to be willing to be reactive when these things do happen, right? Because that's what I think is sort of the crux of what you're talking about, is that like this is clearly happening, maybe for the first time in a major impactful way to a lot of people, but right, we can either be reactive and say, okay, let's listen, let's educate ourselves, and then let's make intelligent decisions based off of what we know and what we can do, etc., versus almost like denying reaction, which is what I felt a little bit like this country is wanted to do, is just basically be like, nah, can't happen to us, right? Like we're gonna take care of it. I mean, that's definitely an extreme way to take the argument, but it's certainly interesting, because I do believe, right, that yes, our science and our medicine has advanced in amazing ways over the last 100 years, but I mean, shit, man, 100 years in the grand scheme of the world isn't shit.
It's absolutely nothing.
Just like, the earthquakes or hurricanes or whatever else that could happen, right? People are the big one that I'm always definitely willing to, at least from my perspective, be reactive if faced with something that is clearly like, okay, this is like in your face and you should probably look at it. And, like you, I don't suffer from, I do have a morbid reality. I don't know if that's part internet. I don't know if that's my upbringing. But I do think about that kind of stuff. And I think about,
I really don't know that it's morbid. I actually think that it's normal, and that actually this era of like the last 100 years is like a very peculiar time in human history where there's this giant chunk of the population that's never really, like, their entire goal in life is to not face the fact that they're going to die someday.
Yeah.
I just don't think I think that's an anomaly. I don't think that that's something that's existed for like thousands of years.
That is interesting. Yeah. You said you had one other thing you wanted to...
Oh yeah. So the other thing I wanted to say is, so one thing that I've always thought is that it would take some kind of common enemy, I think, to like unite the entire world. Like I don't think that we as a civilization can get beyond either our planet, or really like I don't think we can get into like the next era of human civilization until we can all cooperate on our planet. Because we can't build planet scale infrastructure without planet scale cooperation.
Correct.
And I think that requires like either that requires a lot of really empathetic people, or it requires a common enemy. And so like this enemy's pretty low tier, so let it be this one, right? Like, it could be something way worse next time. Like another disease like this can happen again. Like this is a good opportunity for the entire world to like get their act together and like learn to cooperate across international borders better, learn to communicate more clearly, and like get our healthcare shit figured out.
I totally agree with that. Dead Baby Seal, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it a whole lot. So thanks so much. It was great to have you on.
Take care, man.
Yeah, have a good day. Okay, I'm just gonna run over here for like 2 seconds. Coming up next, I'm gonna bring Hardman on. Just give me one sec here. I need to change my batteries. And I'll be right back in about 5 seconds. I'm just changing this. All right. All right. Again, I really want to thank I want to thank everyone for being respectful. We've gotten a lot of different comments in chat, a lot of really interesting discussions. It's also great to hear, like, we are respecting the fact that every nation right now is going through something a little bit different. You know, today if you just joined us, we've had someone call in from Venezuela. We've had someone call in from Italy, which was very enlightening. We've had a couple people from the United States. Obviously, I'm here in the United States. I'm keeping a close eye on not only what's happening in the U.S., but, you know, across the whole world. I do find this very fascinating. I would say that myself and Dead Baby Seal share a lot of, it sounds like, you know, similar lines of thinking. I would love to see global unification as it relates to what is going on. We may not be there yet. I do feel like we are still in the early stages of all of this, especially here in the United States, where I believe over the course of the next week, we're going to see our cases pop into the thousands and probably be ranked up there with Iran and Italy, maybe even South Korea in terms of how many actual cases that we have. So I'm also taking this all from the perspective of I would rather be overly cautious and laugh about that in a few months' time than regret it forever. And so that's just my kind of position and my thought on all of this. We've been bringing folks on that want to share their experiences, their thoughts, etc., so that we make sure that this isn't a one-sided conversation that happens in a vacuum. So if you'd like to join us, we'll probably take a couple more calls today. Wow. Any comments on President Trump's latest tweet? Before I bring Hardman on, I went to twitch.tv, twitter.com, POTUS. We can bring this up here. So here's what we got. It says, so last year, 37,000 Americans died from the common flu. It averages between 27,000 and 70,000 per year. Nothing is shut down. Life and the economy go on. At this moment, there are 546 confirmed cases of the coronavirus at 22 deaths. Think about that. See, and again, I don't want to make this all about our administration, but this to me is a fucking complete travesty. This is a jackass where we have had what I would say, you know, there's a NoFX song and it's called The Decline. Anyone familiar with this song, The Decline? And there's one line in it that since the day that came out, I have thought about this one lyric over and over and over and over and over again. And maybe like we're going to play, that's how we're going to close the show. We're going to play The Decline because I think it is so fucking relevant to what is happening in this world right now. The Decline is the lyric specifically, here, I'm going to bring it up. NoFX, The Decline lyrics. And let me go down. Million. Okay. So the whole part goes, I wish I had a shilling for every senseless killing. I'd buy a government. America's for sale and you can get a good deal on it and make a healthy profit. and then this part, or maybe tear it apart and start with assumption that 1 million people are smarter than one. And that is very profound to me because in the current climate of things, I think that 1 million people are smarter than the one who is making the calls. Dead Baby Seal brought up one of the best points that essentially negates what Mr. Trump is, President Trump is saying here. And that is that there is actually a fucking vaccination for the flu. That exists. Millions of people get that vaccination every year. And even then, we still have that many people that are dying from the common flu, right? Like, is that perspective looked into that? Like, Mr. Trump, did you think about that, right? That we are dealing with something that we've never dealt before that could evolve or mutate that we don't have a vaccination for? And what does that mean? So I also think that, man, Trump's so fucking concerned about the number of confirmed cases and is not listening to anyone who says, man, if you think we actually only have 546 cases, you're out of your fucking mind. With that being said, I'm going to bring Hardman on. Again, we'll take a couple more calls today. If you'd like to join us, and I don't know, we'll see. This might be the last call, but if you'd like to join us, please hop in the Discord, join the phones channel, and I will drag you up on air. About to bring Hardman on. Hardman, hello. Good morning, afternoon. How are you doing?
Let me turn the sound down of the stream.
No problem.
Yeah, it's afternoon for me. I'm in the Netherlands. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for coming on. Would you mind telling us where you're from, just so that everyone kind of has some context?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm from the Netherlands.
Okay.
Southern part of the Netherlands, which tends to be the province with the most cases at the moment.
Yeah. Also, I mean, because this is kind of interesting to me because we did last week have to announce that we were canceling TwitchCon Amsterdam. And I think like prior to when those discussions began, I think that Netherlands had only about, 8 cases. And, now you've had an increase very similar to the United States, sitting about 321 right now. But yes, thanks for joining us. Thank you for giving us that context. I think it's important just that people know, like, right, the perspective that individuals are having from nations all around the world. But what are your thoughts on everything that is happening right now?
Yeah, well, to begin, I've been following this since like half January.
Okay.
So there were not that many cases yet back then.
Yeah, it was still pretty light.
So I believe at the end of January, there was this paper where they published, based on a few assumptions, of course, that like with a 99% reduction in travel and transport, there would be only a 24% reduction in spread. So basically back then already I was telling people like this stuff is coming to the whole world. And, yeah.
So you would say that since January, when you kind of like saw the early news, you took interest in this, and that you based off of what you were seeing, you felt like this was something that was going to grow to be a pretty large problem. Is that accurate?
Exactly. So I bought like hand sanitizers, liters, and masks, and everything has gone up quite a lot of the things that I bought. So it's quite bizarre to see it all unfold.
Did anyone say, "Oh, Hardman, you are crazy for buying all that stuff"?
Definitely. Yeah, everyone told me I was crazy.
And how do you? I mean, none of us want to be in a like "I told you so" role, but do you feel at least a little bit, like vindicated that you were, you saw this early on and made some of those decisions?
Yeah, I'm glad that I made those decisions for myself, at least. Of course, nobody wants to be right about such a thing.
Right. Yeah. So
but
talk to me a little bit about what it's like in the Netherlands. Like, obviously, you've kind of given us context that you've been following this, you've been watching it. Is it safe to say that you're
yeah,
not surprised then by the spread that we've seen globally?
no, it's not surprising at all. And what we see in confirmed cases is probably like only 5% of what is actually being going on right now.
Yeah.
The thing is, in the Netherlands, it's people are still waving it away, kind of. So they still think like my dad, for example. I had dinner with him yesterday. Told him this early on too, and yesterday again, and he still thinks it's the flu. Like it's nothing worse than the flu, and yeah, it just gives me a headache. People that say such things because it's really different.
Do you right, like, I can say with confidence that people have that opinion based off of how, right, the initially the government reported on it, the
Yep.
initial media
Yep.
reported on it. Is that similar in the Netherlands? Like, what's
Yep.
driving?
Yep.
Yeah.
So my opinion on that is that since I've been following it, I also watched the news reporting on it. And initially they waved it away as it will never come here and blah blah blah, and it's not that bad. And there were many during 1 or 2 weeks time frame. There were like many articles stating stuff about the coronavirus and that it was nothing worse than the flu. So I think the average opinion of the Netherlands is majorly impacted by those early on articles about it, and it seems to be really hard to convince them otherwise. So yeah, the mainstream media has had a major impact. Like they are still saying that masks do not help. Meanwhile, in like research in published papers, like there has shown to be a 80% reduction in chance of attracting these viruses if you wear like even a simple paper or what it is, a mask. So yeah, it's total bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. So, would you say that you've got pretty much similar to the United States? And, that's my context, and that's why I always bring it back. But, I would say that we are literally 50-50, right? We've got 50% of people are like, not a big deal, carry on. And then another 50% that, maybe in some phase of panic, or at least I'd rather not use the word panic and using
No.
preparedness, right? Like they
Yeah.
want to be prepared and or caution, are cautionary towards it. So what's generally you think the sense in the Netherlands right now?
I would say that like 90% of the people are still like nothing is going,
Okay.
and maybe even less people. Like there's very few people that think like currently. But I've noticed that like the awareness has been rising, and I keep hearing people like, "Oh, you were right," and but then they still do not take precautions.
Mm.
I, for example, try to avoid public busy spaces now, simply because you have bigger chances of walking across someone who has it because there's
Right.
more people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the weird thing is too, like I get a lot of packages at my home, and ever since a week or 1.5, if I receive a package, the delivery guy, he stands with a reached arm to me, and when I take the package, then he's like, "Okay, bye," and then he quickly walks away. Normally, that's not really the interaction with people that deliver stuff. I know my brother delivers supermarkets, grocery. How do you call it?
Yeah. Grocery. Yeah.
Yeah, groceries. And he got special protocols how to handle everything. He's not allowed to go in homes anymore, stuff like that.
Interesting. Yeah. So there is at least like companies and or businesses. Sounds like some of them are putting some kind of proposed cautionary
Yeah,
procedures or process in place to hopefully mitigate those types of things.
yeah, exactly. That's That's what I see happening.
Can I
Yeah.
ask about like from a testing perspective, right? One of the things that's very confusing about the United States is people don't know how to get tested, or people have tried to get tested because they're showing symptoms, but because they haven't necessarily been to one of the travel to an inflicted country, they've been denied testing. Do you have any insight to, sort of how that's being handled
In the Netherlands?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I've seen is people can get tested for free, as far as I know, and but very often people are waved away because they haven't been going to one of these areas, like you say.
Got it. All right. So it
So
sounds like similar here, where it's like if you are like not even experiencing symptoms, they're going to be like, brah, go away. Maybe if
yeah,
you've got
but
some symptoms, but you haven't even traveled, say Italy, China, something, they might say, no, you don't need it. So there's still a little bit of gatekeeping when it comes to testing, it sounds like.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And it's really suppressing and making a bias in the numbers right now, because there's probably many more people that contracted the virus from someone, and yeah, I don't know. The weird thing is, I had an appointment in the hospital, for example, today. It's Monday, yeah,
Yep.
today, and yeah, I didn't go because before the weekend there was one confirmed case, and at Sunday they published that there was like 10 cases of workers infected, and one department shut down, and they only do emergencies right now in the hospital. So I was like, yeah, well, I'm not an emergency.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's getting a bit serious.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm really appreciative of your perspective. Thank you for staying on top of it, being informed. I think that's like the best thing we can do right now is intelligently be informed, because obviously there's a lot going on, and this is going to be my final question to you, because I'm curious. Right now, as I mentioned earlier, I would say the coronavirus is probably 75% of our news. What, like, from a media perspective, how much is this or dominating or not the headlines in the Netherlands?
Interesting question. It's like, I would say like 30%. I don't
Okay.
really follow the mainstream media much. I don't like them, but I try to keep an eye on it to see what they tell the people.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
I agree. I would say that I follow the media, right, based off of things that affect me a little bit more, right? Like I want to be informed. In this case, I think the most I've gotten out of the media, at least here in the US, is hearing a lot of medical expert opinions. Because right for the first week, it was just the government. It was like government, 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 government. But then as we started to hear more from doctors, physicians, right? I have to give a shout out to a physician from the Northeast here in the United States who basically was the first person to be like, yo, people, like, we're getting fucked on testing, right? Like, we are not testing anyone compared to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And like, I just think about how different that narrative would be now if we didn't have that introduced. So, it's hard to say. On one hand, like, is the media hyper focusing on this? Like, yeah, they are, right? The rest of it is politics because we're in an elections year right now. But, like, I don't know. Like, I'm so conflicted on, like, is that bad? Is it just is it making things worse, or are people getting more informed, or at least like being able to make conscious decisions based off of that? So it is difficult, to know. So anyway.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I think people should be informed about it. There has been a lot of misinformation from the government too here. But yeah, I have a question for you.
Sure.
I haven't followed the conversations on Twitch. I just typed COVID-19 and it got to you.
Oh,
Um,
wow, nice.
so
Okay.
I'm not really a daily person to watch it, but I was wondering, have you discussed any of the possible treatments for this
we
virus?
we
Do you not want to touch that?
No, I mean, so first and foremost, great question, because the reason normally I play games, but every once in a while I love to just kind of have these discussions. And I am
Okay.
similar to you in that, when this when this whole thing began, like it was something that was very interesting to me, right? Because it was new. It wasn't like this. It was right. It was identified as new. I didn't quite go into the same preparations that it sounds like you did early on, but I think my
Yeah.
attention has been kept over the last month and a half.
Okay.
And I found it really interesting that I don't feel like I've seen a lot of discussion on Twitch. And I would even go so far as to say that in some cases, I feel like I've seen broadcasters and streamers who basically are just going on with their lives like this shit don't even exist. And you know what? Like, to each their own. That's okay.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting that Twitch becomes the COVID-19 like discussion platform, but to me, I think it's a perfect platform because I can talk to someone like you and hear about your experiences in the Netherlands, or hear, earlier we had someone on who is in Italy and we got to hear about how some of the shutdown was affecting them. So, to me, like, I am very thankful that we have a platform like Twitch to be able to have these discussions, to hear some of these things, because I think in the noise of all of this happening, we can get so hyper focused on like what's happening in our community or our region or our country, but it helps to better understand and get a perspective from everyone. So, first off, thank you for searching, and I think that's amazing that you came by, and I hope that you'll come back sometime. But so I've recently seen a couple of the articles that have come out recently that have talked about, and I want to get this right, but some
It's okay.
some individuals who were experiencing like respiratory distress as a result of the coronavirus that were given what was it? It's like there was a medicine that you would not think would be the I bet I could find it real quick, but there was a medicine that you would think like would not necessarily be something that would
And-
treat this. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. There have been many compounds. Last thing I seen was anti-arthritis.
That's
for
it.
example.
Yes, that's right. Anti-arthritis medication that seemed to have a positive effect. So that basically that's just been something that I've been learning a little bit about as more doctors, physicians, medical experts have kind of been talking about their methods for treatment. Have you heard anything outside of that?
Yeah, definitely. This is also something I really like to dig into. So currently there is a guy from, what is it called? I had it open on my computer. Let me quickly get it. It's a guy from Canada. He's researching quercetin. It's a compound from plants, from apples, onions. It's basically in many fruits and vegetables. But he has used it successfully for SARS, Zika, and Ebola.
Interesting.
And he's now running trials in China. And it's the variant he's using is isoquercetin, and it's not really that easy to buy. But the quercetin variant, the naturally occurring one, you can purchase it. But that's one thing I'm super interested in, as there is also a paper being published. A supercomputer based, the Summit supercomputer was utilized to calculate the docking of like 30,000 compounds that are on the list by the FDA, I believe.
Huh.
So approved for human consumptions.
Right.
And there was a list of 41 potential candidates that could be further researched, and there was also this quercetin in it. So basically, what it does, it's disrupting the binding of the ACE2 receptor with the S locus of the virus. But yeah, that kind of stuff is what I'm looking into. It's not really. I believe the mainstream media covered it too in Canada, for example, but it's not
Right.
really something you hear much about. And
I mean, I
yeah.
think at this point, as we globally work towards a vaccine, I think like anything that helps us understand how to treat or might be able to mitigate some of the symptoms that would prevent death, I think, I'm all for. I'm 100% supportive on. So yeah, I mean, yeah. Go ahead.
I would personally be a bit careful with the vaccine for this virus, as there's been they've been working on a SARS vaccine, for example, and the vaccine for SARS, well, it worked, but it made when you contracted the SARS virus after being supposedly immunized by a vaccine, the immune response was a hyperreaction. So basically, it caused more damage than good.
Wow.
Having a vaccination. So, and since this SARS is a little brother of what we are facing now, it might be something you need to be aware of. So I hope they do good testing before they start to inject people with this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why they say it's going to, potentially take so long. But that's very insightful, and I will continue to keep an eye out, and I'll try to find that organization out of Canada so I can learn more about that. So,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Hardman, thank you so much. Not only for stumbling into the stream, but calling in and giving us some unique perspectives and having that discussion with us. I appreciate that.
Yeah, all right. You're welcome. I'm happy that you had me and that we had a brief chat about this.
Awesome.
I may come around later again if you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. So. I have a feeling that I'm not necessarily going to turn my stream into the COVID-19 stream, but I do feel like if I can help have, like intelligent and responsible and respectful discussions that, maybe it will do a little bit of help, right, in all of
definitely.
this. So thank you again. I really appreciate that.
All right. Have a nice day, I would say. And
take care. We'll talk soon.
Good luck. Good luck.
Thank you, sir. You too. Thank you. Be safe. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, Variables. I am quite the silver fox. All right. I'm not sure what order these folks came in, so I'm going to bring AJ Papa in next. We've gotten a lot of different perspectives, which is great. I wouldn't say that was trashing vaccines. I think that is very right. Like, I don't claim to be a medical professional or medical, but I've read a little bit about some of the difficulties in developing vaccines, and so I understand the perspective that he's taken is that it's not so easy as like, we have the right. I mean, like, think about the common cold, right? We keep saying. And in fact, one of the like sort of facts that they talk about COVID is that because of the development that needs to happen behind this vaccination, that we could actually find a vaccination for the cold as a result of some of the research. But it's not such a cut and dry, easy thing. There is no, that's not because I saw Sparkman. I'm just gonna go in this order that we got. We'll be a little bit more point with our thing, but we'll bring AJ Papa in. AJ Papa.
Marcus, good morning. How's it going?
Good morning, man. It's going good. I in some ways this is a bit therapeutic, right? There's a lot of discussion in my household. I would say that the Casa de Graham is very up to date, is very informed. We watch a lot of news. We discuss a lot. Mini Wheat is as involved in the discussions, but it's really interesting to start to hear a perspective that's outside of Nebraska and even outside the United States. And I know you're in Seattle, so this could be a very interesting, talk. But what's up, man? How you doing?
Yeah, man. So I'm in Seattle, which is, I think, considered sort of the epicenter or the hotbed of the coronavirus in the U.S.
Right.
And the first confirmed death was in this state. So it's kind of hit me a lot harder than most, I think.
So when you say it's hit you harder, is that a hey, this is something that is existing in the news, and then all of a sudden, like bam, like and it was like a lot over a short amount of days, because I've definitely felt that in the last 24 hours, where I had mentioned earlier, I wasn't sure if you're here, but like we got an email from the school district last night that said, hey, the first case in Nebraska has been linked back to 6 schools that your son happens to go to. And like it went from something that is like relatively, out of my grasp to something that seems like it is right in front of me. Is that similar?
Yeah, I think it is similar. So maybe not harder, but faster than most, because the whole closing down of schools, I think we experienced that maybe a few weeks ago, and it's still continuing. So it's a lot accelerated here. And it's just that what I want to talk about, the whole response from the governments, especially at the federal and even the local levels, has been abysmal.
Yes.
Kind of embarrassing, honestly. I mean, there's a lot to say about the healthcare system in the United States in terms of access or the way we pay for things, but we have one of the best healthcare systems in the world in terms of treatments and research and development. It's just, I can't believe the response that's happening here. Like, you showed a tweet from Trump earlier, and it's not just affecting it. So if you think about it, the one thing that Trump had going for him going into November was the economy, right? But you can argue that he's riding Obama's coattails,
Sure,
for him, and it's affecting the economy.
Bro.
You think he'd be more worried about it?
I mean, that's the weird part, is that I feel like he is worried about the economy, and that's why we have a very nonchalant almost approach to it at the top level. And you tweeted something last week that made me laugh, but has also made me cry. And I think it was your roller coaster tweet about the 401k, and that was you, right?
Yeah. I said, if Six Flags wants a new design for a roller coaster, check out my 401k, and you can call the roller coaster the Corona Rock.
Yes. Like at the time it made me chuckle, and like I always believe like the things that impact me the most, the things I remember. And that was definitely something, because I felt that as well. And I've been watching and keeping an eye on the markets. And, this morning we had a really bad start. It does look like we've at least have like a 500-point recovery, but needless to say, it's having an effect on the markets. The weird part is that I do think that a lot of Trump's response has been both economy driven, because that's been such a huge part of his narrative. Oh, look at how great I've made the economy, but also just re-election driven, right? And that's the part that hurts the most. It just feels bad, man, right? Like I partially because I'm just like, how do people not see through this, right? Like, how are people okay with this? And I think going back to what Dead Baby Seal is, it really shows the lack of unity and the separation that we have as a nation right now. And I think that's just, while it is affecting things now, I worry about the long-term effect that this has, on us as a country.
Yeah, I agree. It's just, I would like to see more response from the federal level than what we're getting now. It's embarrassing. So there's also there's things going on here in Seattle, like so the Gates Foundation, Bill Gates from Seattle, he has this foundation and he's starting to develop a home test for coronavirus. You
And
think
this is
that's
someone in
something-
Seattle?
Yeah, this is in Seattle. So home tests are apparently going to go out to people, but it's from the Gates Foundation. You would think
Oh, yeah, I read about
government would have been involved in this, but no, it takes, a billionaire, I guess, with a good philanthropic heart to do this. It just, why does it have to come from him? Why couldn't this come from the federal government or the local governments? And
Yeah. I don't know. I can't answer that. I've actually, I don't know. Has anyone watched the Bill Gates documentary on Netflix? It's like The Mind of Gates or The Mind of Bill Gates or something. And a big part of that documentary is about some of the work that he has done to try to advance clean water systems in third world countries. And I found it all very fascinating. I mean, I'm infatuated with his brain because of like the technology side of things, but he is a problem solver. So frankly, when I saw that headline, it made me feel a little bit better because any level of success has the chance to be adopted. Like we aren't necessarily at the mercy of the federal government all the times. Like right now, we absolutely are. And yes, I asked the same questions. I just hope that that some level of success does come from that, and that might benefit other regions, etc. I think that in and of itself becomes a commentary on how this was handled, how it could be handled in the future, and sort of like, the travesty that kind of has unfolded over the last couple of weeks.
no, I mean, I agree. I'm glad he's working the problem. It's just, it shouldn't take a billionaire to get things done. With the resources of the federal government and the local governments, it's crazy. Even so, here in Washington, there was a hotline set up. You could call if you feel like you might be affected by the coronavirus or you have symptoms. And it was comical. People started calling the hotline with crazy hold times, and when they did get through, they'd say, I don't know, go to your physician or go to an urgent care hospital and call them. So people would call them, and there's actually a case of this. I'm paraphrasing from Twitter, but they'd call the hospital, and then the hospital would say, call the hotline.
Right. And then it would just be a back and forth, like a passing the buck type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the type of response that is frankly embarrassing, and everyday life has been affected here. I actually get to call into your show because I'm working from home. The whole city's working from home. Amazon, one of the biggest employers here, sent all their employees home. Microsoft as well, Boeing. It's just the whole city is bunkered right now. There's a run on everything, a run on toilet paper.
Yeah. So
Purell, all that.
would you say that the what is the quote unquote panic level in Seattle, given the cases in King County and the deaths, etc.?
I think people are I think there's a healthy amount of panic. It's not, chaos, but people are worried about shaking hands or going to malls. I mean, so we're sort of in our bunker mode now. A few weeks prior, it was a rush to get everything set up, your provisions, your supplies. Costco was a madhouse. People were a little on edge at the grocery stores trying to fight for supplies. But now, I have a few friends that work at Costco. They told me it was a ghost town on a Sunday, which is one of their biggest days. It's just people are now holed up in their fortresses,
right?
trying to avoid contact with people. it's a little wild.
Yeah, and you know that I think the hard pill to swallow in all this is that you've got a lot of medical experts that are saying, folks, this is the beginning, right? Like we're not in the middle, we're not even close to the end, but this is the beginning of it. And I think like, right, um, Farrell Helena just came in and said, glad I was able to tune into this. I'm a trader and I've been a bit busy this morning, right? It's affecting things on an economic level. It's affecting things on a resource level. It's going to affect us from an educational standpoint. Obviously, we've already had things like GDC and things like South by Southwest and TwitchCon EU canceled. So it's affecting us on sort of, you know, not only like that also is economical, but, you know, I had an interesting discussion with actually a guy named Kuhn. He is one of the original founders of Crunchyroll. And this was before all the cancellations. And we were talking about the mobile summit that was canceled, right? And I think like this is the easy stuff to kind of overlook, but this event, what we are experiencing around the globe, right? And shutting these types of things down. And this might be trivial when you think about the grand scheme of everything, but it's just another perspective to think about, right? When you don't have something like a global mobile summit where millions, or not millions, but like hundreds of thousands of people get together to share things like techniques, what they're working on, advancements, like strategies from a mobile business perspective, it means that we're going to kind of like skip a year of potential innovations, of potential discovery, education, etc. Like this whole thing really, in an interesting way, is going to like pause the advancement of a lot of things in this world. Hopefully the byproduct of that is that we become much smarter on how we deal with these things, how we communicate with one another, how the media handles these things, etc. So it's all very fascinating on every single level. But obviously the main concern right now is medical, educational, and just, you know, making sure that people are informed and hopefully staying safe.
Yeah, I also really feel for, because, you know, sort of my side hustles, working esports gigs, and a lot of my esports buddies are, you know, work on the production side, are worried.
Right.
All these events are getting canceled or postponed, and you know, some of these they rely on these sort of yearly events to make a living, and it's gonna get hard for them this year. So,
you know, I've thought about that, obviously, because I've got a big connection there, and I've been thinking about that and trying to like establish some sort of prediction. But in this crazy way, I think that, you know, while we've had such a boom of like, yeah, we're doing this big arena, we're doing this big arena, what I think might happen is that we might have a resurgence of like the grassroots online coverage of esports, right? Like I don't see esports stopping, but if it means like, thankfully we can live in an online world and in a lot of cases compete, not perfectly, but we can. So on one hand, it's going to take away a lot of opportunities, but it's also going to open a lot of opportunities in terms of like how we might cover things or how we might, you know, compete in things. So again, it's another point of this having like a massive effect on everything in our lives, right?
right. I mean, they're banning travel to from Korea and Europe, so maybe America will win Evo this year.
Wow. Yeah, it's very true. Well, I hope you stay safe, man. I also am working from home, but I already work from home. But it's you know, it's interesting like to see that effect on Silicon Valley, that effect in Seattle, and you know, TGM was just mentioning that like WebEx gave out thousands of free licenses. Like it's awesome to see technology company. It's also crazy to see how many more solicited emails that I have gotten as a result, right? I have seen so many like, do you need a work from home solution? Like, check this out. And so it's like, on one hand, I'm like, hey, that's cool, but it's also like borderline, like exploiting the situation. I don't know. I kind of feel it's smart, but it's also a little dirty feeling, if that makes sense. But
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know.
there's opportunity in times of fear.
Of course,
you know.
of course, yeah, yeah. A bit like war profiteering. Yeah, that's someone in chat. Dirty Beat said that, but well, you stay safe. I'm sure we're gonna maybe we're gonna make Mondays the update day. I normally stream Monday mornings, but I don't know. It's I woke up. I've been thinking about having this conversation online. I haven't felt like I've seen it or gotten a chance other than like Reddit, which I can only take so much of that. But I appreciate you calling in, and I suspect that we might be talking again in the future.
Yeah, thanks, Wheat. Stay safe yourself
You
and
too,
your
man.
family, and send me some toilet paper, please.
All right. We're going to bring on Spartan Man. Spartan Man, thank you so much for being patient. And Weasel, I know you were in here earlier, so if you do still want to try to get on, I've got I'm going to say about 30 minutes, maybe about 25 minutes. So let me bring on Spartan Man. This might be our last call of the day. But again, I want to reiterate, thank you all for joining us, for having a respectful, intelligent, and thought-provoking discussion. There's a good chance we might continue this. I don't want to make my stream turn into the COVID-19 stream, but I do think it's important that all wakes of life and all different communities and industries are talking and discussing this sort of thing. Again, I think it's very interesting, and I'm grateful that a place like Twitch, where so many viewers from so many different countries and walks of life can come together and share their experiences, their thoughts, their opinions, etc. It's comforting in a way. So let's bring on Spartan Man. Spartan Man, good morning, afternoon, night, wherever you may be. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well.
Thanks for being patient. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I
So
normally don't tune in, but I saw you're talking about, and it's revolved around me right now since I work in an airport.
Oh, interesting. All right. Well, this is not a perspective that we've been able to, or that anyone's brought to the table. And actually, I've traveled a fair amount over the last couple weeks, and so the airports have been a thing of interest to me. We're actually, if you don't want to tell us what airport you work with, I totally
Oh, I
understand.
don't mind telling.
Okay.
I'm in Minneapolis.
Okay.
International.
MSP is huge.
Yeah,
It's a fucking
it's
hub.
a second hub for, I believe, Atlanta's Delta's main hub, and
Yeah.
if you fly anywhere from East Coast to West, you're most likely, if you're on a Delta connection, not a nonstop, you're gonna probably go through Minneapolis.
Yeah. I mean, I've been through MSP hundreds of times. So, yeah.
It's a big airport.
Also, one of my favorite airports to like eat at. There's some great eating establishments in MSP. So
They've been changing a lot of that recently.
yeah, because of what's going on.
No, just remodeling the
Okay.
whole area.
Well, it's one of the few airports in the world where you can get a donut burger that's fucking delicious. So,
Yeah.
But we haven't, we've talked to a lot of people. We've talked to folks from Italy. We've talked to folks from the U.S. The airports is one of those interesting things, right? Because outside of traveling, here's the things that I've learned. Like, a lot of people are taking precautions, right? Like, bathrooms seem to be more crowded because people are washing their hands and they are making sure. I've seen more sanitizing stations. Believe it or not, airport like Hudson Newses are the only place where I feel like I find a lot of hand sanitizer. As I traveled to Los Angeles this past week, every time I went in one, I just bought one bottle just to be like, better
Just
be
so you
safe than
have it
sorry,
for a
right?
while.
Yeah. You can't get this shit anywhere else. And, if I walk into a Walgreens, so might as well get it when it's available. But what are your, like, what things have you seen, right? Oh, the other thing I have noticed is that typically airlines are looked at as sort of the not flexible industry, right? If you buy a ticket and you want to change your ticket, a lot of times they're like, cool, but it's going to cost you this much money, or
Yeah.
you can't get a refund, or you didn't buy insurance. But both Delta and United, those are two airlines that I fly pretty frequently, and I've got status on. They sent out emails that said, hey, up until this date, if you want to change or get airline credit, you can. We're going to be flexible with you. So to me, like, that's a really great extension of, of at least like an olive branch to say, hey, normally we're real hard asses about this, but because of the what we're dealing with, we're going to do that. And I imagine that's a better step than being like, we're shutting down, right? We're closing things, right?
Yeah.
Something the government hasn't said. But I've talked enough. I'd love to hear, what have you seen, right?
I think it was just over the weekend. I think it may have been last Friday. There was the first potential coronavirus case in Minnesota. And
Okay.
I was actually at the airport, I think would have been Wednesday or Tuesday night, and I happened to walk by people getting interviewed by the airport or by the news. Turns out they were two of the people that got quarantined from the I think they were on that Diamond Princess ship,
Right.
or
Okay.
one of the other ships that got quarantined then after onto a military base, and they finally just came home, and I think they're just from the outskirts of town.
Interesting.
But I've seen normally I'm in customs, and we finally just, I think it was last year or the year before, had nonstop flights from Seoul, Korea, and now they started canceling. I haven't seen Amsterdam. Still seems like it's flying in to Minneapolis, but I'm not sure about. I know we have a flight from Tokyo, but I'm never there when it flies in, so I'm wondering if that one got canceled too.
Now, you have a lot of inbound international flights. Is that
Yeah.
so? One of the things that I've read, and of course, right, I don't necessarily read everything and be like, that's fact, let's go ahead. But there have been some concerned journalists who have talked about traveling from, say, let's say a place like Italy, and upon arrival through customs, felt like there was a severe lack of, testing or even questioning or, anything like that. Are you aware of these stories, and have you seen anything to back those up?
I haven't really seen much. I know I do see the CDC at inside of customs,
Okay.
but I don't really talk to them much because I barely even see them.
Right.
But I haven't really seen too much testing from their point of stand. I'm
Yeah.
guessing they're only testing people that have been to that region of the world in their itinerary.
Got it.
So that's mostly what I've heard.
Okay. Okay. And what I mean, like, as an airport employee, in whichever way you might be engaged in that way, are people talking about it? Like, is there any concern and or panic as someone who works in an airport where, right, you could have someone flying in from China, from Italy, and at this point, like, right, anywhere in the world that has a significant number of cases.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any concern there?
I haven't really seen too much concern, but it's hard to tell because I've heard getting the flu vaccine should be a must. It helps against it, or at least helps against people not getting the flu. So there's more supplies for coronavirus right now. But most I've seen is it's hard to tell when people are sick around you.
Right.
But all I've seen is people with the face masks all the time, and I've heard those don't actually even really help that much.
Yeah, it seems like there's still,
And
right. Some
supplies are
people are
running
saying
low at
they
the
do
airport.
help.
I mean, in the hospital.
Oh, sorry. What's that about supplies?
Well, people buy out the medical masks, and
Oh, right.
then hospitals don't have enough to use in the hospitals itself.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there any concern to you, right? Like, historically, it's been Well, it's been about 18 years since we've had a massive shutdown that wasn't related to actually 19 years, right? I think the last time would have been 9/11.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've had some weather, some hurricane, right? Some instances where travel has been sort of shut down. Is there any concern, even from your perspective, that travel could be restricted and effectively that affects you and your job, right?
Oh yeah. I heard recently something like airlines might be possibly uh, canceling a lot of flights, which would affect everybody at the airport for a while. And it's hard to say because my job is I have to be there. I can't really work from home because you can't really push a wheelchair without being there.
Right. Right.
So I'm not sure how that's going to affect me, but it seems like right now it shouldn't as much.
Now,
But
are you taking any precautions yourself, right? If you did
I
want to
took
wear a
a.
mask or,
I
whatever.
haven't really worn a mask, but I know people that have been. But I did get a flu shot a few months back, so hopefully that will
Mitigate.
counteract.
Yeah.
Which I'd say if you're in an airport and you work out there, that should be a mandatory thing.
Yeah, I mean, in any whether it's coronavirus or not, right? I mean, I would
Yeah.
just suspect that you are, somewhat more susceptible, right? You might take all the precautions in the world, but travelers, right? Like a lot of travelers these days are actually first-time travelers. And as someone who travels a lot, and I'm sure you see this too, like I can pick out in an airport someone who travels regularly versus someone who has never traveled before. Like it is so very obvious to me the way they act, the things they do, etc. And I would imagine, like in a place like MSP, right, you have a lot of sort of novice travelers, right, who might not take some of the same precautions that a seasoned traveler would. So I actually would agree with you, right? And then I'm not saying that because of the coronavirus, but like in general, that seems like a very smart and intelligent and preventive thing to potentially do.
Yeah, I've noticed that too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that aren't taking the precautions and don't think it's going to affect them, even though you never know it could.
Right. Right. Well, that's super interesting. I really hope for the sake not only of the industry, but also just for, individuals like you who, I think about a potential travel ban, right? I'm not saying that might happen, but when it has happened, it has a much deeper impact than just the airlines, right? It has an impact on anyone that works in an airport or in that industry, everything from like, rent-a-car places to the eating establishments to, all of the different retail that exists inside of airports. So I do feel for you all, and I hope the best for the industry. It would be great if we don't hit the point where, we have to do any sort of restrictions. Understandably that we might, for like
Down the road,
trouble
yeah.
areas, yeah, or periods of it. But it is certainly an interesting perspective. So, anything else
I'm
you
just
want?
wondering,
Oh, go ahead.
since I know that Summer Games Done Quick is going to be coming to Minneapolis again, I'm wondering if that's going to be canceled now, but it's hard to say because that's still down the road.
I don't know for certain, but like having been involved with, kind of hearing about right TwitchCon and some of the decision making behind that, and being around the industry where other things have been stopped or shut down. Like I think one common thread we're seeing to try to mitigate some of the impact is, hey, we're going to throw the event, but we're not going to allow, right, anyone to show up, the public, right? This happened with IM Katowice. It's happening in other countries where it's sort of like things are happening and they're almost like, it's almost this weird utopian thing where it's like BTS, which is a Korean band, they held this press conference and there was literally no one in the audience, but they streamed it online, right? But it just has a different energy, a different feel, right? So I wonder if there wouldn't be something like, hey, due to what's happening, we're going to let the runners come in, but we have to ask that, if you're not a runner, that,
You can't be there.
you
Yeah.
can't be there. What would really suck is the complete cancellation of the event, right? That's something that
Yeah.
raises millions of dollars for a great cause and a time that we really need it. So I do
I'm wondering
hope
if they'll change
like
what they are donating to this year
I
to maybe that.
yeah, I
Like
don't
research or something. They usually do something good.
Yeah, I've actually wondered that myself. Sort of like I was actually thinking like, well, who even can we donate to, right? Is it country based? Is it who? I don't know, right? There's still so many
Something.
questions, but I agree with you. It would be nice to see that, and I do hope that the impact on these things is mitigated rather than outright cancellations. I know that's it's tough, right? It's tough for everyone, especially people that have already made plans or have already spent money. I hope that in those cases that those organizations and the hotels and like they will work with people to help mitigate that impact. So
Yeah.
it's a good point though, and I'm definitely keeping an eye on that and how it's going to affect E3. Like you said, games done quick.
Oh, E3 is gonna be
One that I've been thinking of recently is, every year I usually attend around April is the St. Jude Play Live Summit. It's hard for me to imagine that in a place where already you've got a lot of immune compromised children, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I haven't heard nothing, but it's just like I think about all the events that I normally attend throughout the year and, will they happen, right? So far, 2 events that I normally attend
go to are canceled.
have got canceled. So it's hard not to think about those things, but yeah, good insight. So, well, Spartan Man, I really appreciate you calling in, and I hope that you'll stay safe, and I wish the industry the best, and thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your experiences with us.
I've also noticed there's a thing from Fox News saying a Texas-based genetics engineering company claims to have a vaccine that's possibly going into phase 1 of testing, but I think it's only on animals right now.
Yeah, there's man, when I was trying to learn a little bit more about that, I had no idea how deep
I
that.
heard there was one that was for human testing, but I'm not sure if that's even ready.
Yeah, I mean,
Because
it
also
sounds
said it's not ready for another year.
it
or
sounds
more.
like the reason it takes so long is because you don't just like give someone a vaccination and then know 30 minutes later, like, oh, it worked, right? It's usually extended amount of time, and then they have to be quarantined, and then there's a lot of thought in terms of like, okay, how does this affect people who have this condition? How does this affect people in this age demographic, right? And it's a lot more complex than you might think. And I'm trying to find a really good resource that I can share with people, just because a lot of this is information that I have been personally picking up or reading about or hearing from a medical expert, et cetera. But yeah, I think like that's news that I'm keeping close eye on as well. So, all right.
Yeah. I'm also looking at the stock market, and that's just crashing.
Yeah, we started off pretty bad this morning. I mean, people probably
Still
see
going
that
down right now.
I keep looking at my phone, and we started off with a 1,900 point deficit on the Dow Jones. We're back up to a 1,400 deficit, which is not great, but that's better than 1,900. And it's not just the coronavirus; it's also things like the oil prices as a result of what's happening in the world, and there's a few other things. And
does that mean gas prices around town will be lower?
I think it
will that
means they're going to
higher?
increase. Yeah.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, I know, right? It's like the last thing we need on top of all of this. So,
It's just
Um,
like hurricanes when they have to deal with
right.
stocking up and running out.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, Spartan Man, I'm going to wrap up. But again, thank you
Yep.
so much for sharing your thoughts, and hopefully you'll stop by again and
Yeah.
say hello.
I might have to ask my uncle, who's a doctor in Ohio, what his take on this is.
I think like I've said it twice already, but I think Mondays I'm gonna probably like let's do a Twitch, COVID-19 check-in, let people call in and share their experiences because things are going to change a lot over the course of a week, and we're going to hear a
Yep.
lot more. And yeah, if you do, maybe come by next Monday and let's chat.
Oh yeah.
All right, Spartan Man, thank you again so much. Be safe, and wish you the best of luck.
You too.
All right, take
See ya.
care. Bye-bye. All right. I'm going to wrap up now. I'm going to leave you all with a song. I mentioned it earlier. I think the song is oops. I think the song is quite indicative of some of the things going on in this world right now. Thank you, Gay Vulture. I appreciate that. So yeah, I mean, like I woke up and I was like, yeah, I could play some Hollow Knight. We'll probably do that later on this week. I was gone last week, which I apologize for, but I had an offsite in Los Angeles, and I'm now sitting in a situation where I cannot even travel. Like non-essential travel is kind of removed. I'm not traveling to Amsterdam this year. Which is sad because I love that city too, but understandably so. And frankly, I hope that this will let people have intelligent, respectful conversations. I would like to hear this talked about more on Twitch. I think that, we are a unique group of individuals who, is in a lot of ways self-isolating and, sometimes in a bad ways, but maybe with the status quo in a good way. But more importantly, I love the fact that we today got thoughts and opinions from 3 people in the United States and 3 people in other countries, including Italy, including the Netherlands. It is a topic that has brought new folks to the conversation. The only other people I've seen discuss are monkeyism and loco. And no, we're not keeping Minnie out of school yet. Although, that was one of the things that prompted this is that we did find out that the first case in Nebraska is linked back to his school. So I apologize that we couldn't get around to everyone. But we will. We will. I'm going to play a song. Why hasn't it found this yet? Let me do this. It's searching through too many files. No, I'll find it in here. There we go. I want to play a song, and it's by a band called No Effects, and it's called The Decline. And this song is quite old, actually, but I feel like it continues to predict the future in a lot of ways. And it's punk, might not be your thing, but it's going to be my closing song today. And my normal streaming hours are Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We'll probably be back Wednesday. But I want to thank everyone for stopping by, participating, getting involved in the discussion, joining up on the Discord, being respectful, and sharing their experiences and their insights. So we will continue to report and discuss this. And I want everyone to be safe. And I hope that, you will not panic, but you will stay informed and you will be respectful of those who might choose to panic or be extremely cautious. And maybe you will help those who are not being at all respectful of the situation in which the globe is going through right now. But a lot has been said here. Again, I cannot thank you enough. I love that we can do this as members of a community and a platform. So again, thank you. And I leave you with this. I will see you on Wednesday. Have a great day and be safe.